Listen to the rhythm of the crackle. Each spark is a moment of peace. I'm Nizrullah. This story of the Trans-Saharan Caravan for sleep, months crossing the desert, slow historical trade route, was written to be read by the light of a fading fire. As the embers glow, feel your body sink deeper into rest. You are safe. You are warm. You are ready to dream. The fire breathes low, now a tired heart after 1,000 miles. Listen to the hiss, the final protest of the acacia wood crackling. Soft and low, the desert floor is cooling fast, and amber glow touches the high ridge. The air is thick with the scent of burning resin. We sit in the quiet, the profound, inescapable quiet of the Sahara look. Deep into the embers, into the tiny dying coals, they hold the ghosts of 1,000 journeys. Journeys measured not in distance, but in patience. But what if the greatest treasure carried across this endless sand was not the glittering gold, not the precious salt, but the weight of the silence itself? Deep, 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 slow sleep forced by the moon and the endless molest, absolute surrender to time. I am a Nasra. And this is Histoire Lebebe. Forget the maps tonight. We forget the frantic rush of the modern world. We are going back to the slow sway, the hypnotic pace of the Trans-Saharan Caravan, a route that was not a road, a route that was a clock, a different way to count existence. This journey was rarely dangerous. It was always slow. It was always long, 40 days, 60 days, 90 days. 3 moons, sometimes 4 moons. Can you imagine that surrender, giving 90 days of your life to nothing but walking, nothing but watching sand and stars? This is the bare Bala Mali Sea, without water. We ride on ships of the sand, the great Mehari camels, their huge feet muffling the soft earth. Listen closely now. The world slows down to their breath. The only sound is the leather creaking creak. Creak, creak. And the rhythmic padding of the hooves, soft thump, soft thump, soft thump. 3 miles an hour. That is our destiny, 3 miles an hour for months on end. The body aches at first. Uninitiated mind screams for speed, screams for distraction, screams for an end. But the desert refuses. The desert demands attention. The desert demands stillness. The mind cannot flee. It must adapt to the pace. It must become the sun is a tyrant by day, scorching, blinding, relentless driving you down into the saddle, but even the heat becomes routine, a familiar weight on the shoulders, a heavy blanket of shimmering air. You look ahead and there is nothing but the next tune, the next hour, the next soft thump, soft thump, soft thump. You begin to notice things, tiny details invisible to the frantic eye, the miniature tracks of a beetle, the sudden flash of color on a piece of stone, the way the light shifts at the 23rd hour of walking. The world stops talking, and the world begins to hum, a low resonant vibration of pure existence. Caravan is a living chain moving as one huge sleepy creature, heads bowed against the sun, heads lifted toward the impossibly bright stars. And the sleep of the desert is unique. It is not the tired sleep of rushing. It is the deep restorative sleep of surrender sleep, earned through relentless repetition when the camp is set. And the fire dies down to embers, and the stars burn like scattered diamonds. You lie down in cooling sand, and the planet cradles you. Silence is absolute, the weight of the journey. The simple, undeniable fact that you have walked it presses the weariness out of your bones. You fall into a trance state, a perfect, heavy, timeless oblivion. We sleep like the stone and the sand. This is the hidden secret of the caravan. It's not a trade route for goods. It was a trade route for time, for a deeper, slower way of knowing a profound quiet that modern life has stolen from us tonight. We reclaim that quiet. We ride in the shadow of the slow rhythm. We follow the creak, creak, creak of the ancient path. We watch the stars move slowly. We listen to the desert breathe, and we let the sand swallow our worries. This is the lullaby of the long road, the history that teaches us how to slow down, how to sleep, how to simply be. We walk through the great quiet, the deep, deep, deep quiet. Hear the fire first. The sound of pine crackling slow and deep amber light, pushing back the vast blackness. The cold air tries to creep, tries to steal the warmth, smell the foot scent of dried camel dung, the sweet, sharp tang of burning cedar wood, 1,000 miles away from water or reprieve. We sit here now tonight, we watch the sparks drift up to meet the stars, but where did this slow trade truly begin? Not with the glittering promise of gold, not with the purity of Saharan Saltip began with a whisper of desperation, a terrible gamble. The forgotten secret of the Trans-Sahara is not how they crossed the endless dunes. Is why we remember the shimmer of wealth, but forget the gray dust clinging to the chains of those who carried it. That is the true ledger of the great crossing. We stay by the heat. The heat is life. The desert gives nothing freely. Cold bites low. The moment you turn your face from the flame, it is a bonnet-deep cold that settles in the marrow. Cold that reminds you of the infinite sky above youth. Fire remembers the months of walking 1 foot after the next. Endless hypnotic shuffle of leather on sand. They moved slow, always slow at pace, set not by ambition, but by survival. If you rush, you die. If you stop, you die. So they found the rhythm, the slow beat of the journey. Human drum against the silence of the earth. Listen now to the sound of the camp settling. Soft, insistent sighing of 100 heavy-laden camels. They're great. Throats complaining of the weight. The weight was everything. The weight of the sacks of rock salt mined from ancient seabeds. Weight of the heavy bars of gold hammered crude and pure. The weight of the spices that smelled of sun and distant shores. Always the heavy scent of the human cargo. The soft cargo that cost nothing to pack, but everything to move. Moral gray of the journey settles like ash on the tongue. Were the price the cost of opening the world? The caravans were a river of economy, a river of deep human fear. The dust knew their silent steps. Dust knew their hunger. The dust knew the thirst that pulled them down slow and sure. The men who led them, the Tuareg, the Berber, they were masters of the void. They saw the gray. But they followed the ancient mandate. Survival means carriage. Carriage means trade. Means gold. Gold requires the heavy lift. The fire burns low. Now watch the embers sink. Watch them lose their fierce orange. The glow becomes soft amber. A gentle lull. Air is thick with the persistent smell of dried human sweat leather and ancient spice. The ghosts of 1,000 sun-blasted mornings. Caravans woke before the light, before the heat could rise to kill them. They packed quickly, the taste of stale water already on their lips. They started moving before the sun was born to steal a few cool miles to avoid the madness of the midday glare. The heat was a living predator, always stalking, always waiting. It stole the moisture. It stole the mind, the weight of the journey, the slow, steady, unbearable cost. We sit in the circle of the firelight, safe now from the cold, safe from the heat. But remember the miles, the sheer unforgiving scale of the crossing, months of walking toward wealth, walking toward slavery, walking toward the end, gold and dust and human breath. The slow hypnotic journey of empire sleep. Now sleep under the stars that watch them walk. The fire now settles, low and amber pulse. Against the blackness of vast silence stretches out beyond. This light, the silence of 1,000 miles of sand. The question hangs suspended in the dry air, a question about crossing. The desert for months, a question about the endurance of the human heart. What was the real trade? What was the cargo to? Heavy to carry, back to valuable, to weigh on a dusty scale. It was not only gold for salt for gold. It was belief and language, a blueprint of kingdoms. Architecture of a slow thought moving slowly across the immense empty canvas. Sen remembers everything. Caravans were rivers of men and burden flowing across the great emptiness for 1,000 years. They walked that linear 1,000 years of footsteps swallowed by the wind. They walked beneath an unimaginable moon. They walked under the indifferent stars. The legacy is not just the crumbling walls of Timbuktu, library stacks filled with faded contracts. The legacy is the spirit of movement, necessity of trust. The roots demanded trust between strangers, trust in the slow promise of the future. If you survived the month, the brutal, sudden, fierce wind, you carried more than profit. You carried permanence carved by hardship. The rhythm of the camel bell still rings low in the Historia, slow, hypnotic. Chemia guide for the weary eye. It signals arrival, signals survival. But what of the secrets that were never treaded, whispers lost entirely to the dunes? Every journey requires sacrifice, and the desert demands a heavy toll. Not all travelers completed the crossing, not all stories reached the next fire beneath. The endless shifting grain sleep, the answers to questions we no longer know how to ask who. Were the silent guides, the astronomers who navigated without charts, forgotten queens who financed? The great roots, we see the surface shimmereth gold gloried, but the true mystery rests in the silence that Silence of the forgotten. Silence of those who disappeared entirely. A merchant might lose his camel, a scholar might lose his scroll, but when a civilization forgets the knowledge of the crossing itself, it loses its anchor, it loses its rhythm. The sand covers the tracks. Sand forgets the fear. The desert protects its true secrets. It protects the names of those who fail it. It protects the map. Of the stars they used to pray to, sit here now in the slow light understanding that the journey never truly ended. Simply moved to another plane of Moria, plane of slow enduring. Historical sleep, the vastness remains. The question remains who truly controlled this ancient economic engine. It the kings of Ghana, scholars of Malay, Tuareg guardians of the wellsprings, or was it something far older, far deeper than any human? King of power woven into the land itself, a power of hunger, a power of water. Tonight we let the embers settle low, low, low. Low, but next time we turn our gaze eastward to the most legendary crossing of all. Journey of one man was immense, astonishing. Wealth was so great, so heavy with his story that when he stopped to rest, the crashed the global economy, Mansa Musa, taking of gold. We will trace his steps and ask if his journey was a miracle clear, a warning sleep well now. The desert waits for the dawn. The cedar. Wood cracks slow. The embers breathing deep red in an amber glow against the black vastness, Whisper of safety, a moment of fragile pause. Remember the fire, remember the warmth. Remember? The scent of burning pine resin, it dies, now it fades. The night consumes? The last flickering light, the desert waits, always waits. We awaken not with a start, but a slide from slumber to slow preparation too begins in the silence of the cold. Dawn the desert is cold, so deeply cold, a stillness broken only by the groaning camels. Camels rising slow, the camels shifting weight. They know the road, they know the long months ahead. They accept the burden, the unbearable weight, the weight of history, the weight of gold. This journey, this sleep history, it demands a rhythm, a pace so slow. It redefines time itself. We must move slowly. We must move slowly. The sands demand slowness. Sun insists on patience, a footstep, a breath, a rhythmic sway, 1,000 footsteps, 1,000 breaths, 1,000 miles. We are counting not hours, but heartbeats. Slow heartbeat of the caravan. The brass bells clank low and steady. Constant chime, a monotonous song, a lullaby of trade, a symphony of dust. We listen to the clank, we listen to the rhythm. It tells us we are moving, it tells us we are alive, tells us we are making progress, slow progress. Look at the horizon, look at the heat. The air shimmers, the air dances with illusion mirages. Of water, mirages of shade, the mind plays tricks, the mind seeks comfort. But the body knows the truth, only sand, only sun, only. Distance, measured in camel lengths, distance measured and thirst endured. The Trans-Saharan route is not a straight line. It is a dream path, a river of dust. It curves around mountains of emptiness, avoids the terrible breath of the dry wind. Wind that strips the moisture, the wind that steals the sound. The silence is heavy, the silence is deep. You can hear the whisper of your own blood. You can feel the grit settling on your tongue, always settling, always there. We are moving salt, we're moving gold, we are moving humanity across the impossible. The salt blocks white and cold and hard, heavy with value, heavy with necessity. Trading life for life, trading mineral for metal. The slow engine of wealth grinds onward. It grinds onward slowly. It grinds onward endlessly. The camel driver walks ahead, a silhouette sharp against the rising light. His feet know the way his ancestors walked this way. He reads the tiny shifts in the sand. He knows the memory of the ground. The ground remembers every track, every fall, every passing. The desert holds its secrets close, whispered by the wind, only to those who move slowly. Only to those who submit to the pace. Pace of the centuries, the pace of the trade. Imagine the suspension of normal life, the complete absence of the outside world for 60 days, for 90 days, for 4 slow months. You forget the sounds of the city, the rush of the market. You forget the names of your children. Perhaps only the camel matters, only the movement matters. The hypnotic sway, the constant clank. The mind slows down, the heart settles low. The journey is a meditation, a long sustained trance. They say the desert induces a sleep while awake. You exist between worlds, between the place you left and the place you might reach. You live in the middle of a vast empty pause, a pause held taut by rope and leather rope. holding the structure rope, holding the cargo. The cargo is precious, so precious. The future of empires rides on these humps, rides, slowly rides, steadily rides into the sun. Sun is relentless. The sun is absolute. It measures our days not by the clock, but by the shadows, short shadows, harsh heat, long shadows, cool relief. Seek the shade of the tent. We seek the shade of the beast. We wait for the blessed descent of the night. When the stars return cold and clear and the fire is briefly resurrected, a memory of warmth before the slow march begins. Slowly, slowly, slowly across the endless sand. The fire breaths low now a tired ember glow, a steady warmth, holding back deep blue. Velvet cold. The desert cold is not the cold of winter rain. It is the cold of absolute vacuum. It steals the warmth from bone and breath it demands. Attacks a constant vigilance against the slow freeze. The flame shivers a little, a small dancing thing against. The endless darken, you are safe here for this moment. You are safe beside the ferret, this hypnotic fire. But out there, just beyond the light, moral grays of the caravan settle like the fine silt of the wind. They settle on everything. We spoke of gold and salt clean exchange, the noble risk. But what of the human freight, unseen cargo carried in the chest? Fear the guilt, but terrible relief. The sleep comes heavy here, a merciful weight after the sun's malice, but sleep does not silence the memorious. It amplifies the echo of the day. Listen close to the breathing around you. Now the low guttural sigh of the heavily laden camel, shallow rapid breath of the merchant, counting per fifth, utterly silent breath of the one who knows no choice. The air smells thick tonight, not just of smoke and roasting mutton fatty, smells of brine and old sweat-a-stale. Aroma of month-old journeys, leather chafing the human skin, damp, wool, soaked in worry. Caravans moved at the pace of the weakest lengthy. Moved at the pace of endurance, and endurance is a moral calculation. It is a cold question asked every dawn. Who gets the last drop of water? Who carries the heaviest burden today? Who is worth the slowing down? Who is worth the risk? Terrible riskin'. The sand beneath your sleeping mitar, the small sharp stones of forgotten promisey broken packs, whispered prayers. Desert asks for honesty. The caravan offers only survival. They trade in salt, they trade in spice, they trade in the bodies of men. And women too, a quiet, shameful commodity treated with less care than the gold dust itself. Because gold dust does not fatigue it, gold dust does not weep it. Is the grayest transaction of the necessary evil whispered in the dark. The fear of the slave, the indifference of the guard both are of this history both are bound by the need to cross, need to reach the other side. We cannot look away from the cost, true sensory cost of progress, the odor of desperation, the metallic tongue of exhaustion. The cold that sinks beneath the skin, the fire sinks too, now a patient, slow surrender, reminds us that every journey ends in stillness in. Every great trade route is ultimatalia. Human artery pulsing with life and death pulsing with cold, hard necessity. Sand whispers the rhythm. The sand whispers the names. Sleep. Endless dento, the silence after the heath. Cold, deep silence off the great desert crossing. The final fire shrinks low in amber eye. Winking slow in the heart of Timbuktu, dust settles. Scent of exotic spice and sweat and ancient burning musk remains a memory held by the stone walsa, whisper of 1,000 bargains, Madian, the echoing silence of the well. Great journey, ends great wealth dispersed like water finding cracks in the earth. The gold dust poured and weighed slabs of white salt exchange rated, not just for sustenance, but for power, for empire, for history itself. The soft tread of the camels fades there, heavy burden lifted, but the weight of the legacy remains it. Remains think now of the journey, not as a path, but as a scar across the map, a thin line of human endurance where empires met and melted where. The desert demanded its Tolvery step, a commitment to destiny every sunrise, a defiance of death. The stories of the great caravans were written in transactions, but the real history was written in the silent grith, sand that ate the tracks. We measured the legacy in the artifacts, the golden coins, the leather scrolls. We forget the deeper legacy, unseen, invisible. Networked flow of IDs, slow creep of knowledge of mathematics, of faith carried in the heads, of the not in chests, but in minds. The desert was not just a barrier, it was a conductor, a slow, powerful engine of civilization. But what did we lose? What did the desert keep? It is mystery now, is silence now. How many dreams were buried under the undulating dunes, how many secrets whispered into the hot air that were never heard. How many graves marked only by a shift in the sand, the desert guards its dead with a fierce and indifferent patience. Think of the forgotten knowledge earths, specifics of the Rutesti, secret water caches known only to certain familiar snow, scattered now gone. Precise lineage of the Tridevi unspoken rules of allegiance. The desert remembers everything but refuses to speak it. Holds the forgotten kings, lost cities, the unrecorded wealth. Legacy of the Trans-Saharan routes is not just the wealth they moved, it is the vastness of the silence. They left behind a silence. Deep it feels like waiting for the wind to tell us something, waiting for the sand to confess to the mysteries it swallowed Halith. Vast, overwhelming loneliness of history is silence. No, but the echoes persist, soft chime of gold below. Great of Salta, constant subtle haunting. We look at the empty expanse and we see the ghost of prosperity, a shimmering illusion of movement. The caravan is gone, but the hunger for connections, hunger for distant goods that never dies. The world began to shrink, thin, a little bit smaller, a little bit more connected, be the slow rhythmic pace of the camel. But connection takes many forms. Some roots are slow and steady. Others are fast and terrifying. We have followed the deep track across the sand. We have felt the dryness, the heat, the rhythmic sway. But history often turns on a compass point of shift from solid ground to the endless, unpredictable motion of water next. Time leaves the stability of the shore and the slow, predictable footfall of the caravan. We will look not to the great golden desert, but to the churning cobalt sea. What happens when the journey is governed not by sand and heat, but by the cold, wet violence of the wave? We turn our gaze now to the ships that sailed beyond the known maps, though the spices of the east. Prepare yourself for the terrifying secrets of the monsoon winds and the ghosts of the great lost maritime empires. We remember the fire we always remember, the Ferretti memory that holds the edges of our sleep, the high pitch of the cedar crackling, sharp scent of burning pine sap. It throws shadows that dance on the tent canvas. At last, easy warmth, that amber glow deep and soft before the profound. Quiet of the crossing began before the scale of the world dwarfed us utterly, before the desert became everything. What did that heap protect us from? What deep forgotten secret did the sand bury that we lose when the caravan moves? Let us remember the walking. The walking was the clock. The walking was the meditation. The caravan moved with the slowness of geologic Timina. Hours, not days, but months, outstretched like dry leather under the enormous sun. We walked the metronome. It was the camel bell, a dull bronze sound, a constant low ringing, always there, insisting on the pace designed not for speed but for endurance. A single camel step measured the day, and a step was perhaps 2 feet, and then 2 more feet, and then 2 more, and multiplied by thousands of camels, multiplied by 90 sunrises. It is a calculation of deep patience. The sand was ancient flower underfoot, soft pine, resisting it, hissed against the low sand also. Constant whisper of complaint. This whisper became the soundtrack of our journey. It was the same dust every hort, same light every dawn. The horizon never changed yet. Everything changed within us. We became simplified. We became simple creatures of thirst and shadow off, movement and rest. We learned to love the slow sway of the load, the deep, slow rhythm of the breathing beast. It was a natural sedative. Load was heavy salt from the north, gold from the south, ivory, spices, knowledge, and the weight of history. But the heaviest load was the expectation of slowness, the absolute knowledge that you must keep walking, you must accept the months. The journey itself was the most precious commodity, basic condition to soul. It broke down the frenzy of the city, it eroded. The need for haste has no place in the desert. It wastes water, it wastes energy, it wastes life. The caravans moved only during the hours that were bearable. We chased the shadows, we found the cool seams of the day, and when the sun became too fierce to stopped under a tent woven tight a small pool of shade in a universe of light. Then the waiting began, the stillness under the midday blaze. Time for quiet, talk of time for cleaning the blistered feet, of time for remembering the fire. But mostly it was the silence, the profound quiet when the camel bells stopped. The only sounds the buzzing of flies, the murmur of a prayer. Low, steady sound of our own blood moving. The desert enforced a certain kind of deep sleep, a necessary oblivion when the stars came out clear and cold, and numerous exhaustion was total. The body demanded surrender. We slept on the sand sometimes, using a saddle as a pillow. The air was clean, dry, medicinal. It smelled of salty rock and distance, and when you lay down after walking, for 10 hours, dust still clinging to your hair, you felt the rotation of the earth beneath you, deep, slow, inexorable, turning. The fear of the miles melted away, the worry about the future vanished. There was only the moment of deep rest, the deep, deep rest before the bronze bells rang, calling us back to the slow pilgrimage, back to the walking. Back to the walking, the night has swallowed the sun. Cold rises up from the sand, a terrible weight. It is not the cold of winter in a city wall. It is the cold that steals the breath, the cold that seeks the bone. The fire breathes low, now an ember heart beating it. Beats against the immense silence of the Sahara. We sit here. We sit in the circle of the ancient trade. The fire smells of dried dung and bitter acacia wood. It smells of smoke and the scent of old leather. It is the scent of survival, the scent of the pathless. And to the crackle, listen to the wood weeping into ash. The light throws long, terrible shadows against the dune shadows that twist the shapes of the resting men. They look like ghosts now waiting for the dawn. But dawn is far, and the distance here is measured not in miles, but in the slow decay of hope, the moral cost of this crossing. It does not reveal itself in sunlight. It waits for the deep quiet of the desert night. It settles around the fire pit like the fine insidious dust that coats everything. Dust in the eyes, dust on the tongue, dust in the ledger book. What does great wealth smell like after 30 days? Of spices from the south, not only the clean, dry scent of salt, it carries the dense musk of fear. The deep smell of unwashed bodies pressed too close. The tang of copper blood dried quickly into the sand. It smells of the choices no one speaks of. The choices made when the water skims are low. The choices made when a camel collapses its eyes, rolling white. Life is the cost of a canteen of water here. Single decision can be heavier than all the gold carried. The merchant sits opposite me. His face is hidden in the dark, but I see his hands. His hands are cracked and stained with henna and worry. He is a man of faith. He is a man of commerce. He must weigh his profit against the human weight. He must weigh the life that falters against the lives still depending on his success. This is the gray desert morality, the deep desert truth. He is not evil. He is simply counting the days until the oasis, counting the diminishing stores of grain. The send whispers against the canvas of the tents, a hiss, a soft, persistent sound that never stops. It sounds like time running out. The fire knows the secrets of the caravan, knows the names of those buried shallow, those left behind in the shifting sea. The men dream of home now if they can sleep, but sleep. It's been a shallow shield against the cold. They dream of green, they dream of water falling loud, but they wake to dust. They wake to the fire's slow pulse. They wake to the smell of their own exhaustion. The breathing of the animals is heavy deep. The camels groan, settling their massive weight into the cold sand. The rhythm of their suffering is the soundtrack of the night, is the hypnotic rhythm of the trade. Rook slow movement is everything here, but movement demands cost. The cold demands cost. The darkness demands silence, and in the silence we hear the true price of the salt and the gold. Price is the human spirit worn thin by the sand, worn thin by the cold, worn thin by the knowledge of what must be left behind. Listen closely now to the sound of the breathing. That is the true history. That is the lullaby of the desert. The fire is dying down, but the shadows remain, and the choices remain until the sun returns. The slow sand shifts below us now. The grand artery of the south fades not in a single sudden collapse, but in a slow hypnotic retreat, like the tide receding far out, leaving behind only the wet shimmerth memory of the ocean's strength. The Trans-Saharan route did not die, it merely slept, it merely waited. It became legend. It became ghost the empires built on gold and salt Mali, Songhai, Ghana. Wealth, now amber memoria, deep glow beneath the silent dunes. Think of the measure of this legacy, not in the weight of the gold dust, but in the weight of the knowledge transferred thee. Slow diffusion of thought, rhythm of the world, connecting world. The route was a school of parliament of the sand where Berber met Hausa, met Arab, met Tuareg, and when the steamships can be the steel pathways slicing through the coastal lands ancient. Camel pace, the slow, steady rhythm could not compete. The modern world demanded speed mended. Instant rewarded. Forgot the power of this slow journey, wisdom earned only through months of waiting, but the silence remains the silence. Keeps the count, millions of hooves trod this earth, millions of lives breathed this ancient air, and now the wind is the only traveler there. Wind carries their scent of dried dates and deep specia, the phantom scent of charcoal smoke, the desert. Retains the past, it swallows the weakness of man, but holds tight to the truth of the journey. Speak of the libraries of Timbuktu, scrolls of ancient wisdom. Hidden deep buried beneath the floorboard, soon into the walls, feared by the encroaching shadows. These are not just books, they are the living echo of the caravan. The knowledge bought with weary sweat. Intellectual gold that balanced the monetary gold. We search for treasure in the sandway. Search for the lost cities, the forgotten mind, but the true treasure, the true enduring mystery is the map of stars etched into the mind of the traveler, the navigator whose compass was the night sky. Man who felt the difference between one grain of sand and the next grain of sand. The desert keeps its secrets well. The mystery is the quiet, profound, unending quiet where only the heartbeat matters where. Only the journey matters. We leave the road now. We leave the deep scar of history on the earth's long serpentine trail of trade, but we must ask who truly held the keys, who truly understood the language of the endless horizon, the language of the shifting mountain of sand, who mastered the crossing, who were the true kings of the silent space. We must turn our gaze from the burden off the gold and the sultan look into the eyes of the people, the patient, fierce protectors of the route, the lords of the vale, the guardians of the water wells. They did not just guide the journey, they were the journey. How did the Tuareg, the blue Mentha children of the desolate vastness manage to survive, to thrive, to relieve? Most unforgiving terrain on earth. What forgotten lore? What deep tribal wisdom? What unbreakable codes sustained them for centuries upon centuries? What happens when the journey ends, but the guardians remain next? We cross the threshold of Tassili Niger, enter the territory of the Kel Tamashek. Seek the masters of the desert silence. Seek the people of the vale. Seek the Tuareg, remember. The fire, beloved, you will remember the fire. The slow crackle of the desert scrub. The amber glow that painted the faces of the guides. A fragile ring of warmth against the endless cold black of the desert night. The scent of burning pine, slow burning. Slow, it was the heartbeat of the caravan. It was the memory we carry with us. Now the fire is ash. Now we move. We move into the deepest, where the silence swallows the sound of your own breath for begins here. Here, where the maps disappear and only time remains months upon months stretching ahead. The Trans-Saharan Caravan is not a sprint. It is not a quick crossing of water. It is an education in patience, For slowness that modern life cannot comprehend, the passage of 300 sunrises and 300 sunsets, and still you walk, still the sand continues. The sand is the great narrator of this story. Shifts it, whispers it, forgets everything you tell. It is dry and less deep, and the great weight of the cargo rides above it, the heavy burden of history, salt for gold for salt. This silent exchange that fueled empires. The salt was carved in great glistening slabs, perfect geometry pulled from the earth, more valuable than the metal in many towns, more precious than water itself. Imagine that value resting on the hump of a camel, a living ship of the desert, moving at 3 miles an hour. Miles per hour pace, so deliberate, so unavoidable. It becomes the rhythm of your sleep. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, the steady rhythmic sway, the hypnotic motion that rocks the soul to rest. We are following not just a path, but a state of a deep state of historical surrender. To the slow pace, surrender to the sun's merciless strength. Caravan masters knew the secret of endurance. It was not about running faster. It was about drinking less. It was about moving only as much as the weakest camel could tolerate it. was about synchronizing the breath of 100 men and 300 beasts, moving as one silent, slow organism, one slow shadow creeping across the infinite yellow skin of the world. And what did they carry besides the gold and the salt? They carried memory, they carried the stars in their heads. The great navigators of the desert did not use parchment maps. They used the feel of the wind. They used the subtle texture of the dunes. And they used the precise position of the smallest rock outcrop remembered from 10 years before memory. Was the compass trust was the currency if the guide forgot a single well, if he misjudged the distance between oases by even one day, the whole endeavor, the whole trade, the whole fragile network would dissolve into dust, and thirst. They slept listening for the ghosts of the desert. The Djenne that followed the wind, they slept deeply because they had walked so far. They slept deeply because they knew they must walk further still. We are moving through the desert of deep history, where the measure of a mile is the measure of patience, where the measure of a lifetime is the measure of the caravans. Journey left foot, right foot. Listen to the muffled thud of the camel pads against the soft sand. To the weight shifting, settle. Listen to the silence that demands you slow down slower. Still, we are waiting for the dawn. We are waiting for the next step. We are waiting for the next memory of fire. The fire draws us closer. The desert breathes out a chill, a deep cold chill. It is the night breath of the great Sahara. Listen. To the wood, it sighs, it protests brittle crackle against the vast, overwhelming silence. We are held here, suspended in the amber glow. This small island of heat against the dark. The cold does not wait. The cold always waits for the flame. To fail, we speak of gold and salt, we speak of slow commerce, but what does the caravan truly smell of not? Just spices, not just cinnamon, not just the sweet musk of dates. Smells of pure human exhaustion. It smells of the sour, deep stink of sweat dried and re-wetted 40 times, the sharp, raw tang of camel leather, cracked and stressed. It smells of despair, too, a metallic scent, clinging to the throat like rust. The dust, the endless dust, is a taste grit between the teeth grit, lining the lungs. The very air is thickened by the memory of sand. Men sleep, fitfully wrapped, tight and coarse wool. They dream of water, they dream of lush green, things they cannot name. When the wind shifts the smoke from our pine fire, it tries to mask the scent of men who have walked too far. It fails. It always fails. They carry salt white, brilliant salt worth its weight in gold across this barren land. And they carry burdens they do not speak of. The weight of the precious cargo is nothing compared to the weight of the risk. Look into the embers, look deep, they glow like the molten gold they seek. But is the gold worth the ghost of the man lost 3 days back? Was he worth the price of a single salt block? The answers blur here. The desert offers no easy lines, no clear division between the right choice and the necessity of movement. Moral grays are the color of the twilight sand, indistinct and inescapable. To survive is to move to. Survive is to push past the limits of thirst, to push past the boundaries of the body's aching protest. The cold sinks into the marrow. The cold reminds you of your mortality, a constant low hum beneath the sound of the crackling wood, the camel's heavy breath, the rhythmic sound of leather squeaking under load. This is the true music of the trade route, not the clinking of coins, but the suffering of the beast and the man. The months stretch out, months of walking. The sun is a tyrant by day. The cold is a deeper, more insidious tyrant by night. Sleep is a brief mercy, theft from the duty of watchfulness. Theft from the fear of the shifting dunes. They fear the bandits, of course, but they fear the emptiness more, the emptiness that swallows sound, that swallows hope. Listen to the deep silence now. It is not empty, it is heavy with all the unsaid prayers, all the calculations of profit and loss. The loss of a life measured against the gain of 1,000 ounces of gold. They trade necessity for luxury. They trade certainty for immense risk. The history we tell is often only about the end result. Shimmering gold, the rich spices, the grand palaces built on the profit. But the history that matters, that grips the sulis, the sound of that man shivering by the fire. Right now, his eyes heavy with the dust of 2,000 miles, his hands raw from leading the line. We wait by the fire. We wait, we listen to the lullaby of the crackling wood. The journey sleeps now, but the dust remembers. The desert never forgets. It holds the cost of every single grain of gold. The gust settles. Now slowly, like the closing of an immense four, concludes beneath the heavy sky that watched 10,000 crossings. The Trans-Saharan trade route, the artery of the ancient world, is now mostly shadow, mostly silence. But silence does not mean absence. The desert floor is a vast graveyard of secrets. A thousand caravan bells still faintly chime if you listen beneath the wind. Wind carries the ghosts of merchants, the ghosts of the camels, the ghosts of the water bearers. Walk eternally toward Timbuktu, or perhaps eternally away from Tagazet. Weight of the sand is the weight of history. The shifting dunes swallow cities whole. They hide the evidence of forgotten deals. Lost maps, the undocumented paths we see. The legacy in the great mosques of Djenne, universities built on the back of salt and copper. See it in the language, the faiths, the destiny of nations, but what did we truly lose? What? Knowledge was scattered by the desert air bore the scholars could find it. We only possess fragments of the grand tapestry, a single silver coin. A broken piece of pottery, whispered the king, named Mansa Musa. The true nature of the ancient markets remains elusive. We can chart the journey, can map the wells, but the human soul that drove the Tridethi, fierce necessity of survival, the hunger for connection that remains a shimmering mystery, a heat haze on the horizon. The mystery is in the footprints, millions upon millions of footsteps overlapping for centuries each. Step in ambition, each step a sacrifice. Now the route sleeps. The Atlantic ships stole the future. Coastal ports drew the wealth away. The slow rhythm of the caravan could not compete with the furious speed of the sea. The caravan sleeps, but the desert remembers. The desert keeps its counsel. It holds the source codes of empires, origins of the mythic wealth, holds the secret of the gold, Minas gold that flowed like a river, the gold that built palaces in the west, the great gold of West Africa. It defined currency, it defined power, it defined civilization. It was the engine of the entire trade. The salt was merely the vessel. Camel was merely the transport. The gold, the pure, shining, inexhaustible gold, was the prize, the magnificent obsession. But where did it truly come from? The stories are vague, the sources were guarded. They were the most protected secrets of the ancient world. The merchants would sooner die than revealed. Location off the mines of Wangari, the gold was the ghost that everyone pursued. The gold remains the ghost that still haunts the desert. The gold, the unimaginable gold. Next time we must walk the final miles. We must leave the familiar trade paths and push into the deep south. We must find the hidden earth where this luminous wealth was born. We must discover the mythical source of all that glittered, the place of the silent gold, the land that gave birth to gold and silence. We remember the fire always the memory of crackling wood slow and low, the amber glow, the deep red heart swallowing the endless desert night. Scent of burning pine, comfort long forgotten 1,000 nights ago, 1,000 miles ago. Smelled that smoke, we remembered that warmth, now only silence. The immense deep silence, but the memory burns still, a soft ember buried in the deep Santo 5 of Historylube. I am your master narrator. In this Rulo, we follow the slow road, the Trans-Saharan slow caravan, crossing not measured in weeks, but measured in the turning of the soul, months, crossing the desert slow, historical trade route, they call it. But what if the slow movement was not a hindrance? What if the slow movement was the purpose? What if the desert demanded this pace, this deliberate deep pace to truly reveal its secreta, forgotten secret about the caravan? It was not a commerce journey. It was a sustained exercise in deep rest. We speak of gold and we speak of salt, but the true cargo was endurance, the heavy, slow rhythm of the camel carrying not just silver ingots, but carrying sleep itself. Think of the silence. Complete absence of the world outside, only the soft shuffling of hooves. A sound heavy with sand, a constant hypnotic thrum, a deep vibration that enters the chest and demands the body. Slow down demands the mind, slow down demands that time itself surrender. The sun rises heavy, a blazing copper disk. We move slowly through the shimmering heat haze. Airs thick with dust and ancient promises. The heat presses down hard, a heavy blanket of slow exhaustion. We measure the distance by the taste of thirst. Dry, thick taste, always present, always, but the movement is relentless, slow, relentless. We walk, we drift, we follow the stars. The patient steady guides the patient steady. Tuareg, they know. This path not by map or chart, but by the slow memory of the rock, the slow shifting shape of the dune. Move with the quiet wisdom of the old world, the world that had time, the world that demanded patience. This is the lullaby of the desert, the sound of the leather saddle creaking, the low, mournful hum of the guide's sangha, steady chant against the vast nothing, pulls you down into a state of awareness, deep sleep while awake repetition. Repetition, the same sand, the same sky, the same heavy step. The mind empties itself of the hurried noise of the world left behind there. Is only the present mile, a present sun, a present slow breath. We think of trade routes as paths connecting places, but this route connects moments. It links one slow sunrise to the next slow sunrise. It forces contemplation. It forces a reckoning with how long slow time truly feels. It is an engine for spiritual slow change. Massive moving monastery of merchant monks. The camels are patient, they are heavy, they carry the weight of empires and the weight of history, but they also carry the promise of rest, the promise that when the sun falls, the darkness will be complete and the stars will descend low and heavy. We look up at the cosmos and we see a clarity, a depth that is impossible in the world of the quick light, a million slow, cold fires burning high above, and we are small, we are slow moving between the two great infinities, the sand below and the sky above. The fire is gone now, but the warmth remains low burning. Sensation in the memory, we travel on slowly, always slowly, following the ancient deliberate rhythm, the deep slow history of the sand and the star, silence, and the slow steady breath. The fire shifts, now a low murmur, a whisper of heat against the vast indifferent. Black, we stay here by the amber hearth, sweet narcotic scent of burning acacia, temporary shield. Is easy beneath the stars to speak of gold toe, recount the weight of salt slabs, riches waiting on the distant shore. But the true cost-heavy currency of the caravan settles in the lungs, it settles in the silence. Feel the dry heat on your cheek and notice immediately beyond that warmth. Deep cold, the pervasive cold of the Saharan night. It does not matter how close you draw cold, still bites. At the back of your neck, it seeps into the bone as a reminder that the desert is vast and you smell so very small. Listen closely now. Sound is not the crackle of wood. The sound you hear is the low groan of human weariness, rhythm of exhausted. Breath silence. Between the heartbeats, they call this trade, but it is a negotiation with the nearly mile. A choice, very shadow of potential threat. We speak of the camel guides, Tareg men whose knowledge is life, but look at their faces now etched with lines that are not just sunti or calculations. A man collapses, now a fever takes. Hema blister turns foul. The caravan must move. The caravan must always move. This is the gray arithmetic of survival. Is one life worth the delay? Is the man worth the water? Is his weakness a threat to the many? There is no malice. Hurry no villain unly. The necessity of the sun-crushing clarity of thirst. The guide does not look back. The guide cannot look back. He leaves no witness. Leaves only a memorious stain upon the sand that the wind will erase by dawn. The sand is cruel. It holds the heat all day and then it leaches the warmth from your body all night. It absorbs the blood, vomit, sweat, and tells no tales. Smell. The air now, it's a scent of stale baits rancid. Fat used to grease dried leather and deep within that faint mineral tang of dried sweat salt left behind by tears that were too precious to shed. The travelers clutch their robes tight. They stare into the flameth, hypnotic. Dance of the fire is the only distraction from the things they have seen, things they have done. The weight of the silver, weight of the ivory this is nothing compared to the weight of the forgetting. You must forget the one who fell you. The silent exchange of glances in the water bag ran low. You must convince yourself you are a vessel, a machine of forward movement. We are by the fire, we're safe here for this short hour. The embers glow like distant cities. We may never reach cities. Built on the graves of the men who tried repetition is the language of the desert. Walk, breathe. The sun is cruel, the cold is deep. The silence. Fear does not shout, it creeps like the sand filling the empty space where compassion used to be a space where rest should have been. They traded gold for survival. They traded humanity for the morning light. And now they sit by the fire train to remember what it felt like to be soft, to be human before the desert demanded their hardness. Listen to the low Hume off, the camel chewing kuda, quiet, constant sound. It is the sound of enduring. It is the sound that reminds them. Journey is not over. The fire is fading now. The air is growing sharper. The shadows lengthen. They're calculating. The hours until the next movement, the next sacrifice. The desert asks, the desert takes, the desert remembers and leaves you with nothing but the heat and the immense, endless cold. The shadow lengthens now over the Saharan floor, where the journey ended, where the ghosts began. The weight of the century settles like fine red dust. The camels are gonna, their merchants are silent, but the path persists. It is not merely a trade route now, it is a vast archive of echo. They left not just leather and dates, they left faithy. Left mathematics, left stories etched deep into the sandstone heart of the world. They left libraries in Timbuktu, hundreds of thousands of scrolls of learning of law of astronomy. They left the geometry of the dome. They left the memory of Mansa Musa's. Wealth defied description, was caravans flowed with so much gold, so much staggering, unnecessary gold. Where did it all go? Where did the gold disappear? The sand knows, the sand remembers the weight of the coffers, whisper of the thieves, sudden silence. When a city failed, we stand at the end of the linea, the terminus of the magnificent exchange. The great ocean routes eventually called the lure of the sea, the efficiency of the ship. Slowly, slowly, the wells dried up. Slowly, slowly, the resting places crumbled, but the decline was not a crash, it was a slow fighting along, drawn-out sighing breath. The last caravan moved through, not with fanfare, not with trumpets, but with a weary resignation. They simply stopped coming back. The desert absorbed them all. Good intentions and the brutal realicious, high ambition and the lonely death it swept away the hoof prints, it swallowed the low walls of the rest stops. The wind becomes the final historian, and the mystery remains profound silence of the unwritten. Chapters, what about the lost tribe of the Tuareg woe? Guarded the knowledge woe, knew the secret shortcut, or disappeared when the route died. What about the city of Audagosta, legendary hub? A trading paradise that vanished completely beneath the creeping. Djenne, a phantom city built of salt and dreams, it is still there, now perfectly preserved, waiting for the shovel, waiting for the modern eye to confirm the legend. The sand holds secrets, the sand holds tragedies, it holds the precise location of the great. Rock salt mines that powered empires' minds, that drove men insane with hunger and thirst. The legacy of the caravan is a haunting presence here. Deep genetic connection across continents, a shared faith, a shared history of walking through. The heat, we close the scroll on the golden age, we close the book on the movement, but the most chilling story, most powerful riddle is not in the gold, not in the spices, it lies in the men who tried to control the source, the ones who risked everything. Not for the journey, but for the brutal, deadly prize waiting at the very end. Commodity that was worth more than gold itself. Prize they killed for. Next time we journey into the deadly heart of the matter, into the minds of Tagazawa enslaved. Men clawed their way to freedom, and where one single desperate ruler Adam did to weaponize the white crystalline poison that made the whole route necessary. We talk about the salt and the price of its ownership, the single element that defines the deserts. History, the blinding white death that saved the world. The embers breathe now a slow sigh of heat against the endless cold. Fire breathe us. Remember that. We remember the rhythm of the night, the slow, slow rhythm crackle of acacia, wood dry and ancient. Scent of juniper smoke, the faint sting of resin it holds the dark. Back only a momenta, fragile ring of light against the ocean of sand look closer. At the flames, the slow amber glow it wraps around the weary heart. A warm blanket, remember that light. But tell me this now, as the light sinks, and the shadow. Stretches have followed this route for 5 episodes, have tracked the gold, and we have weighed the salt, but was the greatest wealth carried across this Saharali gold and salt? Or was it something infinitely rare, something they prayed to keep safe? Was the greatest treasure held in those fragile leather? Sacks the secret of patience. The heavy, slow weight of time itself. This is 6. The journey of months, the journey into sleep. The desert takes time. The desert demands time. They walked 500 leagues, walking, not running, not hurrying, the slow, deliberate pace of the dromedaria pace, built for eternity, not urgency. Listen now to the sound that defines this slow impurity. Slow clanging of the camel bells, a dull chime that echoes nothing but itself. Dong dong donga. Metronome setting the beat for the world's longest. Lullaby dong dong dong, you cannot rush the sand, you cannot hurry the horizon, you simply submit, you give your breath to the dust, you give your thoughts to the endless sky. Mind seeks speed, the modern spirit screams for speed, but speed is death, hair is speed. Burns the water, speed breaks, the camel speed fractures. The fragile live caravan moves at the speed of endurance, the speed of deep. Slow breathing, imagine the days, melting one into the next, the sun the same merciless furnace every dawn the steps. The same crunch of grit every noon, the faces of the men blurred by the dust and the distance walking. Walking, it becomes hypnotic, it becomes a meditation forced upon you. This is not a historical journey, it is a psychological test, the silence. Presses and thick and heavy. Quiet absorbed everything, even sound. You learn to find comfort in the sameness. The slow rising of the sun. Yeah. Slow sway of the pack animal. The slow chewing of the cud. We are exploring the history of deep. Sleep trade. The trade that requires you to fall into a waking tranchetto, walk for weeks in a state of suspended animation. The desert takes your focus, it replaces it with rhythm. The weight of the sky presses down the weight of the salt, presses down the weight of the endless empty space, presses down and you walk. The mind learns to entertain itself with small things. Shift of the saddle, the flicker of a distant mirajadi. Slow untying of a knot, the faint whisper of a familiar story, repetition. Repetition, the caravan becomes a living clock that tells time only in exhaustion. The only measure is the distance traveled between two water holes. Water holes themselves slow and precious pausements of deep, slow relief for the walking begins. The fire begins to fade, now the embers become soft gray ghosts. Return to the cold, the deep cold of the pre-dawn desert, but the rhythm remains the slow pace of history. The rhythm of time itself carried across the sand walking in. Silence and sleep. Caravan moves on the fire, now is low, a deep amber heart. It does not roar. It simply breathes a whisper of heat against the enormous cold, the vastness outside the circle of lightness. Not just darkness, it is a hunger of freezing black. Velvet that pulls the warmth out of bone. We have spoken of the gold and the salt. We have spoken of the maps and the tracks. But tonight we breathe in the human cost. The true weight carried not on the camels' backs, but pressed into the sleeping minds. Of the men who cross this barren, empty stage, look closely at the sleeping figures muffled deep in heavy wool. They are not heroes tonight, not kings of commerce. They are just bundles of fragile warmth string to survive the indifferent cold, the air tastes of bitter smoke and thin dust and the metallic tang of dried sweat ascent that tells a story all its own. Story of weeks turning months. Turning weeks of skin stretched tight over weary muscluff, the slow erosion of comfort. The camels shift outside. The light they're breathing heavier, deep guttural sound of resignation. They carry the burdens, they carry the promises, they carry the secret compromises of the trade. The moral grays of the crossing are vast as wide as the desert itself. You cannot walk. This long road, this endless road without leaving a piece of yourself behind, without trading more than just goods. The silver glints, the copper shines, the salt stacks tall. But what is the true price paid for that shining wealth? Is it the silence of a forgotten family far away? Is it the memory of a choice made out of water, wholly a choice between survival and generosity between the man you were and the man you must Beto reach the other side? The desert demands a cruel kind of efficiency, asks you to harden your heart against suffering. It asks you to save your water, your strength, your pity for yourself alone, and the men sleeping by this flickering light. They have done what the desert asked. They survived because they learned to forget Semedemesto. Forget the softness, to forget the easy way. The cold seeps into the heavy wool. It finds the gaps in the thin blanket. The ground is frozen hard, unforgiving. A stone mattress under a sky of ice. Listen to the crackle of the wood. It is the sound of time being consumed, own small breath of warmth after another own fragile moment stolen from the dark. They dream of water, they dream of shade, they dream of faces that are now indistinct fading edges lost in the harsh sun glare. The dream is a luxury, a dangerous gift beckons. The waking is always the cold air, the metallic scent, the heavy burden, waiting. Gold feels heavy in the pouch, but the jilt, the quiet knowledge feels heavier still. It is a slow, persistent ache in the chest. This is the secret of the caravan. It carries everything. It forgets nothing. The heat of the day burns away the skin. Cold of the night freezes the silent. In that freezing quiet, in that deep quiet, moral balance is tallied. Slowly, softly, inexorably tallied a debt that must be paid. When the journey and sip, the journey ever ends, turning months. Deep sleep, the necessary deep sleep is only ever a thin veil against the vast waiting cold. Sun dipped low across the endless dune sea. Now the final stretch of our long journey together. The silence is profound here, a silence earned by centuries of movement. We finish 6, not with fanfare, not with shouting, but with a soft whispering of the wind that still scours the forgotten paths, the ancient trails, the ghost tracks of the camels, the heavy steps of the weary men. The caravan is gone. Yes, the great epic of salt and gold has faded into the archives of dust, but the legacy remains. The legacy remains. We trace it back to the foundations of great cities built on the bedrock of trade, on the trust between strangers. Mali, Songhai, Ghana, built by the sweat and determination of those who dared to cross the emptiness. Timbuktu whispers stories, tell stories of parchment and pack stories, of scholars who rode not on horseback but on camelbackering, not swords, but scrolls of astronomy and lost scrolls of medicine and faith. The knowledge moved, the knowledge flowed, a river of intellect in a land of thirst. We see the patterns etched into culture, the deep patience, the profound honor, the understanding that survival itself depended on cooperation. The routes changed, the ships came, the sea became the faster highway, but the lessons of the desert, the hard lessons, the endured dust settles, but the echo remains the echo of the market cry, the echo of the camel bells, low hum of the nighttime. Song sung beneath the vast indifferent stars, and here we stand at the threshold of the past looking back. At the enormous achievement, the greatest supply chain in the pre-modern world, managed without satellites, without steel, without engines. It was done with leather and rope. It was done with muscle and faith. But even as the history books close, their covers on this, the mystery deepens. We will never know every name of the 1,000 shoe, perished in the searing white light of the Sahara, their bones subsumed by the shifting sand. We will never know the contents of every scroll buried beneath. The floorboards of aging Moskwa's knowledge, hidden away from conquerors' knowledge, forgotten by time. What great secrets did they take with them into the silent blinding heat? What truths about the stars? What remedies for the plague? What forgotten maps of lost oases? The desert keeps its secrets. Well, the desert keeps its secrets close. We look out now across the empty expanse, and the line between history and myth blurs. It becomes thin, it becomes shimmering if you listen closely to the warm wind. You can hear the phantom shuffle of feet. You can hear the dry breathing of an animal long since turned to dust. The caravan never truly vanished. It simply transformed into a dream, a memoria. Recurring theme in the deep slumber of the desert night. The gold was real, the salt was real, the struggle was profoundly real. But there's one final enigma, one story that persists. About trade or conquest, but about pure survival. It involves a single caravan lost in the 14th century, carrying not just wealth, but an artifact, a navigational tool rumored to grant safe passage throughout any storm, through any drought. It was said to be a relic of immense power, protected by a lineage of silent desert guides. They disappeared without a trace, without a marker. The map of their final resting place was supposedly drawn in a sheet of hammered copper and then hidden within the double wall of a forgotten fortress in Morocco. A fortress that exists only in legend, but what if the legend is true? What if the copper map still exists? What if finding it could unlock not just a hidden route, but the absolute key to Trans-Saharan knowledge, the map of the lost caravan, the secret of the copper scroll? Next time on HSDR, why will you be away? Gotten Fortress, we seek the lost map, we seek the key to the deepest desert silence. We remember the fire. Fire, the slow fire beneath the stars, the low warm light against the vast cold night, the sound of wood crackling with a slow rhythmic exhale of flame. Listen closely, the embers, a deep amber glow, a temporary circle of heat, scent of burning pine, a memory of home, a fragile shelter against the great black sky. Desert always listens, always waits. We are moving now. We are still. Moving season begins deep in the silence, deep in the crossing of the great desert. This is not a journey measured in miles. It is measured in the slow death of time and the endless requirement of patience. The Trans-Saharan Caravan demands a different soul. It demands a deep understanding of slowness. What happens to a human being when motion becomes meditation, when your destination is 100 days. Away a full 100 days of walking step by step by step, the camel hoof sinking slight deep always. That rhythm, that hypnotic beat, we carried the wealth of the world across this route. We talked of the gold from Ghana, the heavy raw gold of the south. Talked of the white mountains of salt essential salt, traded ounce for ounce. But what was the true cargo of the caravan, the true weight of this enterprise? It was the time itself, it was the slowness, it was the absolute commitment to motion without haste. Discipline the modern mind cannot grasp. Think of your quick life, your rushing world. Now imagine, the world shrinks. The world shrinks to the space between the camel's ears. Scope of existence becomes just the next dune and the next one and the next one. Ancient guides, the Tuareg masters understood this. They were the keepers of the slow knowledge. They measured distance not by clocks, but by the patience required to reach the next well. Next oasis, the secret patch of date palms. They memorized the stars. They memorized the shadows. They memorized the feel of the sand beneath the leather boot. This sleep journey required forgetting. Forgetting the rush, forgetting the noise of the city, forgetting the impatience of the market square. The desert strips you bare, it strips away hurry. Imagine the weeks passing, the sun relentless. Sun heavy and relentless, a silent hammer hitting the stone. The wind, a constant rasping whisper, it wears down the edges of your soul. Forces you into an unbearable intimacy with yourself. Who are you before the journey? Who have you become on day 30? Who will you be when you finally smell the faint distant scent of the Mediterranean Sea? The desert answers that question slowly through. The aching rhythm of the caravan, the endless search for water. The memory of water, the promise of water. The caravan. It was not just trade, it was a movable city of silence, society built on trust and vigilance, sleeping under the enormous stars. The black sky so close, so cold you hear everything now, the breathing of your fellows, the soft chewing of the camels, the rustle of the robes, and the deep silence of the sand absorbing every sound. And as the weeks merge into months, the distinction between sleeping and waking blurs. Slow steps, the rhythmic sway, it becomes a kind of living dream of cold and salt and survival, a dream that lasts 100 days. We must move at that pace now, the slow pace of history. Slow pace of the caravan, just listen to the breathing, just follow the light, follow. The low light of the moving caravan, it moves slowly. It moves slowly. The cedar wood is tired now, it settles into amber dust. The amber dust remember what the heat forgot. We stay by the flames, we must stay by the flames, for the deep cold of the Sahara is not a gentle cold. Is it demanding cold? It is a clawing cold. It scrapes the marrow, it scrapes the memory. Listen closely now to the fire's soft hiss. It tells of what the day concealed. The sun is a brutal master, but the night is a cruel account in the moral grace of the long journey. They become sharper in the shadow light. They gather at the edge of the circle, waiting for the dawn that may not come. Smell of the caravan is not just the clean smoke of the fire, it is a heavier scent. It is the accumulated weight of months. The sharp tang of goat leather, the sweetness of dried dates gone slightly wrong. But beneath that, deeper down, the acrid sting of desperate sweat, the dry earth mixed with fear, the smell of sickness fought in silence, the smell of a wound bandaged too late. The dust sticks to the oil sticks to the skin. The skin holds the story of what was traded and what was lost. The human cost is measured not in diners, it is measured in the rasp of the breath at the well, when the water is mud, when the water is rationed for the strongest first, always for the strongest first. Is the slow turning away, the turning away from the weakest link, the link that must be shed, so the whole chain survives. Is that a sin? The desert does not judge sin, it only judges exhaustion. The exhausted do not reach Pagazaix. Exhausted do not reach. Gao, the sand keeps the count. The sand keeps the cost. Listen to the muffled sounds now. Shifting of the heavy blankets, the soft groans swallowed by the sand, the deep rhythm of the camels chewing kade sound like quiet grinding stones, grinding the miles down, grinding. The purpose down, they carry the salt, the blinding white heavy salt from the heart of the emptiness gold, toward the heart of the waiting world. The living cargo, the chattel moving south to north to south. Heavy silence surrounds them, all a silence that is not peace, but a massive pressure, soundless burden borne by every soul. The moral grays are deepest here, where survival means making. Something a commodity, making life itself a weight to be balanced against, the slow miles against. The cold that promises to stay forever, look at the faces around the fire illuminated. Now, by the flickering core eyes, reflecting the flame's eyes, that have seen too much sun, too much waiting, too much death. Are they innocent sleepers? Their desert accepts both equally. Takes the gold, it takes the salt, it takes the desperate breathing life. The darkness knows their secrets. Darkness holds their silence. The amber settles further. The fire whispers the names of the lost. The fire whispers the necessity of the cruel choice. The caravan sleeps now. It dreams of water. It dreams of shade. But mostly it dreams of moving, always moving. Always forward till the cruel accountant night returns. To measure the remaining cost, the slow sleep of the trade route continues. The sleep continues. The heavy, slow sleep continues. The journey is over, for now the camels are silent. Chiming, the scent of musk and dry dates fades from the air. We breathe the night air. We breathe the cold emptiness. Sleep comes, finally sleep comes. Sand remembers the millions of footsteps. The millions of footsteps that carried the world's desire, sand. And sleep, and sand, the path never truly ends. The path never truly ends. Desert, the gold dust settled long ago in European vaults. The salt melted into the cooking pots of empires. But the true treasure was invisible. It was the thread of human knowing. The thread of human knowing stretched thin across the vastness. The legacy is not the ruins we see. Legacy is the quiet exchange. The quiet, slow exchange of wisdom. A deeper hunger was satisfied. Here, not the hunger for profit, but the hunger for understanding, the knowledge of stars, the knowledge of water, the mathematics whispered by scholars in Timbuktu, whispered by scholars beneath the light of the desert moon sleep, carried those ideas across mountains of dune ideas that fed the Renaissance ideas that we forgot were born of dust and thirst. We forget the library of the desert. We forget the library of the desert's quiet sleep. The trade was not just commerce. The trade was cosmology. Trade was the quiet, steady transmission of thought, the slow, deep transmission of thought. Sleep thinks too. The long sleep of history thinks it etched lines of learning onto the globe. It linked continents with invisible bonds of philosophy, every grain of salt, every measure of gold buried with it a fraction of the world's ancient minda piece of forgotten sleep, a piece of shared knowledge. And so the great question lingers. The great question lingers in the heat haze, the haze that distorts time and memory. What did the desert swallow whole? What stories did the immense silence claim forever? The names of forgotten guides, the precise locations of vanished oases, the secret treaty written on leather scrolls, now brittle dust. We look at the ancient maps, we look at the looping lines of trade, but beneath the lines, beneath the meticulous drawings lies the untraceable, lies the unsaid. The desert is a masterful keeper of secrets, quiet, slow keeper of secrets. The desert knows the true cost of gold, the true weight of human ambition. Sleep protects. These secrets sleep protects the things we can no longer reach. The ghost caravans still walk the night, shimmer of regret, a whisper of ambition walking across the dark sleep of the Sahara. They are gone, they are vanished, they are mystery. They are the beautiful, slow echo of the ancient trade, an echo that continues to teach us, an echo that continues to sleep softly in the dunes. The fire is embers now. The amber glow deepens into dark, and the vast emptiness holds its breath. We have tracked the goods, we have tracked the men, we have tracked the empires built on dust and determination, but how did they find their way at all when the dunes shifted every hour, when the landmarks were erased by the wind? How did they trust the journey? How did they trust the invisible paths? Next time we will look out. We will look to the quiet wisdom that guided every single step. The maps written not on parchment, but written in the cold, eternal fire above the desert canopy. We follow the star path. We follow The guides who sailed the night sky, the celestial chart of the Sahara, the quiet geometry of sleep, the fire remembers me. Remembers the long nights, the crackling wood whispers softly of waiting. A memory of deep amber glow washing, the sand soft and slow. The scent of burning pines sweetens the night air. It smells of patience, it smells of forgotten secrets, but what if the true cargo of the Trans-Saharan Caravan was never the gold or the ivory? What if the secret they carried across those endless sands was simply the profound silence of deep sleep? The forgotten memory of resting without haste to me, dear listeners, to History Lube. I am your master narrator, Nisrullah, and we move slow into 8 of the journey that reshaped the world's quiet places. The Trans-Saharan, we have crossed the threshold of dread. We are in the belly of the vastness now, where the horizon eats the map and time itself becomes a hallucination. The desert demands a new pace, slow pace, a mesmerizing rhythm of breath and sand. It demands a surrender to slowness. Think of the camel, the ship of the desert. It does not rush, it does not fret. Its gait is a metronome of patience. Constant soft rocking motion, rocking you 6 months, they said. 6 months to cross this sea of dust. Imagine living in a single thought. Movement times, the soft thud of hooves on packed earth. Thud, thud, thud the leather, squeaking gently. Squeak, squeak, squeak. This is the music of the great trade route. Lullaby woven from sweat and distance. The sun dictates the day's sleep when the heat claws at the air. When the air shimmers and warps, the caravan stops. It collapses into itself like a weary beast. The pause is totally, a complete stillness settles on the world. There's no sound but the high buzzing of insects and the sound of your own slowed heartbeat. Thump, slow, thump, slow. Our robes are pulled tight against the light. We burrow into the shade, and the sleep that comes then is not restless. It is the deep bone marrow sleep of exhaustion and safety. The sleep of the ancient world. Sleep that reclaims hours lost to modern frenzy is a slow trade. We exchange anxiety for stillness. We exchange hurry for patience. We trade ambition for pure survival, and in the deepest of that midday resture, dreams become vast and golden. They echo the endless space around you. Desert is not empty, my dear listeners. It is full of silence, and silence is the currency. Of the night when the sun finally dips and the cold, sharp air returns, the fire comes alive once more. The amber glow returns to crackling wood, speaks louder now. The stars appear massive and unforgiving, a billion tiny watchful eyes above. The dunes the sentinels patrol, slowly watching the edge of the dark. The fear of the desert is real, but it too is slow. It creeps, it whispers, it does not rush. It requires the protection of the group and the assurance that everyone else is also sleeping deeply. Slowly, totally, this collective rest is a forgotten secret. 100 men moving as one, breathing as one, dreaming as one. The caravan is a giant breathing organism, one fast, quiet sleep. We are not just moving goods, we are moving time itself, stretching it, bending it, holding it, precious every step. Takes forever, every rest is an eternity. This slowness is the meditation. This slowness is the medicine. We are learning to live by the rhythm of the wind, the slow, shifting sand, the slow, steady flame, the slow, deep breath. The scent of burning pine reminds us patience, patience. We have miles and months left. We must conserve our energy. We must conserve our thoughts. We must conserve our very speed. We embrace the slow journey, the slow history that settles on you like the finest desert dust. Softly, gently, slowly, we return to the fire pit. The darkness presses in close tonight, closer than yesterday. The air itself is brittle, dry, and thin. Listen to the pinate crackles, slow and steady, a lullaby belt of heat and ash. The scent of burning resin sweetens the cold air. We spoke of the gold and the salt, the obvious weights carried across the waist. But tonight we speak of the hidden burdens, the weights that rest not on the camel's hump, but deep in the chest of the man walking beside it. The caravan moved always forward, slow grinding machine of commerce. But what if the engine required human oil? What if the gold dust shimmered with human sorrow? This is the gray path, the shadow history of the great trade routes. It is easy to romanticize the journey, the silhouette of the camel against the rising sun. It is harder to smell the sweat of the suffering, the sulfurous stink of fear mingled with dried dung. The cold of the Sahara is merciless at night. Seeks out the bone, it steals the heat you are in all day. You cling to the blanket, rough woven wool, scratching the neck. But the cold still finds the spaces between your fingers. The men who walked this path, they were not all heroes or merchants sung. Were simply property, a commodity of muscle and breath salt, for gold, for lies. The calculation was simple. The moral toll was infinite. Imagine walking for months seeing the same endless horizon, knowing the only difference between freedom and servitude. The strength left in your own 2 feet. The master trader walks forward, counting his profits. The enslaved walks forward, counting his heartbeats. Both men share the dust. Both men share the crippling thirst. The desert does not differentiate between the free and the bound. It offers the same indifferent cruelty to all who trespass. Yet the weight of the chains is carried differently. It echoes in the sound of the camp at night, not the crackle of the wood, but the low, shallow breathing of exhausted sleep. Sleep that is never deep enough to escape the memory of where you were taken from and the dread of where you were being taken to. Smells are thick and real here, the odor of unwashed wool 7 months on the trail, the sour milk smell of dried sweat. Caked on leather, the sharp metallic tang of blood from feet split on sharp rock. And underneath it, all the heavy scent of the sleeping beast, the camel chewing its cut-a rhythmic sound, a slow, dull metronome of existence the cold makes. The sound sharper, every cough, every whisper, every shift of the sand it carries across the dunes. The sand remembers every step, every tear that dried before it could fall. Moral gray is simply survival. The trader must sell to live. The enslaved must obey to live. Who is the greater victim of this system? The one who risked his life for wealth, or the one who risked his life for nothing at all only? The promise of further hardship. We sit by this fire now. The amber glow paints our faces warm, but just beyond the circle of light, the true cold waits, the true silence waits, is the silence that swallowed whole villages. The silence that demanded every drop of courage, every ounce of faith. The journey never truly ends, even when the destination is reached. The dust settles in the lungs, the fear settles in the soul, and every piece of gold bought by a trade on the gray path carries the invisible weight of human cost to cost, paid slowly, painfully, across months of crossing sleep. Now, let the fire tell you its ancient story. The story of the dust and the desire. The story of the caravan that always moves, always. Moves, always moves. The shadows stretch long now across the cooling dust of the Empire's Eight. Draws down the curtains and leaves us standing alone. Vast silence of the desert night. The gold has stopped flowing in great tides. The great cities of the bend of the river are returning slowly to the sand. They are ghosts now, beautiful, solemn ghosts of what happens when knowledge meets power, and when power finally fails. We talk of legacy. We whisper the names of the emperors, Mensa, Musa, Sani, Ali, Askia, Muhammad. Their stories are written in the stars above us there. Achievements etched in the memory of the land, but their most profound legacy is the void. They left the powerful, echoing emptiness that demands we ask what truly remains. What remains of a civilization built on salt and sunlight? When the sun goes down, we search the ruins of Gao and Djenne, find scattered pottery fragments, pieces of the puzzle that refuse to fit. We find the weight of history, the heavy, quiet realization that all greatness must eventually kneel. Before the unstoppable dance of time and the patience of the desert, the Timbuktu libraries stand still, silent treasuries of thought. The papers inside are fragile, now fragile, like the wings of a moth. Ink that recorded astronomy and law, the wisdom that spanned continents, it is locked away, guarded by the cool, indifferent stone, and the silence, always the silence of the Sahara. But the mystery lingers. It is not merely the mystery of decay, it is the mystery of disappearance. Where did the gold go? Just the caravan's gold, but the enormous wealth of the royal treasuries, did it sleep in subterranean vaults? Does it still wait for a hand that remembers the ancient maps, the forgotten markings of the land and the scholars, the men of vast learning? Where did their wisdom travel when the empires fell? Did they simply dissolve into the population? Did they carry their precious texts across the plains, spreading knowledge like seeds to bloom in unexpected corners of the world? We do not know. We only feel the absence, the heavy, silent shadow of forgotten brilliance. The desert demands silence. It demands patience. It teaches us that names fade away, but the path remains. The path remains worn deep by the millions of footsteps that came before. The caravan route never truly closed because the need for salt never died. The demand for luxury never slept. The flow became a trickle, but the connection between north and south it endured day-thin strong thread, woven through the void, the thread of survival, the constant slow rhythm of trade, the rhythm of the camel caravan. The camels wait, they always wait, the great slow ships of Asan, they hold. The key to the next, the true secret of this vast land, but wait before we close our eyes, completely look. Not at the ruin of the end, look at the beginning of the journey itself. Look to the north now, where the mountains meet the first sharp edge of the desert. A fire is burning, a temporary light against the enormous dark. Listen to the crackling wood. The dry sound of the acacia giving itself up in amber glow spreads, warming the anxious faces of the waiting travelers. The scent of burning pine, a sweet momentary comfort before the bitterness begins before the relentless. Miles arrive, a caravan prepares for months of crossing, months beneath the relentless, unforgiving sun. Slowest journey on earth, the greatest logistical puzzle of the ancient world, but here's the forgotten secret, the one that keeps us watching it. Took months to cross that desert, months of silence and agonizing slowness. What did those merchants truly trade away? What irreplaceable of themselves did they exchange for gold and salt? What did the desert demand as the ultimate price of passage? The fire, the heat is gone, now only the lingering warmth remains. I remember the sound of the azawad thorn wood snapping and splitting, a dry sharp crackle under the immense silent roof of the stars. The scent of burning cedar wood, smoke bitter and clean, an amber glow pulsed against the blackness, a living heart beating in the waste. Watched the wood turn to ember thread, fading into deep violet ishand. We waited for the profound sleep that tastes like sand and distance. But let me ask you a secretive, forgotten truth about this long crossing. Was the greatest danger the thirst sandstorm, bandits sunblador, was the greatest danger of silence itself, endlessness that can steal the min, slow theft of sanity. How did they protect their fortune? How did they protect their souls from the desert's terrible vastness? They protected it with rhythm, with repetition, with the deep deliberate lullaby of movement. We return now to the path. We return to the rhythm of the crossing. Deep breath, sound of 1,000 feet, not human feet, but the padded hoofs of them hurry. Listen to the steady, soft drum thumpsaiga. Sound that has defined global trade for 1,000 years. A sound that insists on slowness. The Saharan earth insists on slowness. The desert punishes haste. It rewards the steady, the deliberate, the predictable pace. You cannot rush gold across 60 days. Of nothing you cannot rush salt through dunes that swallow light. You must yield to the journey's measurelli. Ancient measure of the camel's walk, 3 miles and whore 3 miles and whore 3 miles an hour. This is not a failure of speed. This is the ultimate efficiency. Slowness conserves the water. Slowness conserves the energy. Slowness conserves the fragile thread of what binds a man to his destination. Think of the swaying motion, hypnotic sway. Or not walking. You are being carried. You are rocked by the desert itself, a large, deep cradle moving south toward the Niger River. The camel shifts its weight. The bales rub against leather, to sound of chain on chain. Murmur of the driver's low prayer of movement to prayer of repetition. It is the sound of time being measured not in minutes or hours, but in wells and landmarks and the changing shade of the sand. We pass the same low ridge line. We see the same distant blur of heat haze. We hear the same creak of the saddlewood, repetition, rhythm. Hypnotic lull of the caravan. It washes over you. It cleanses the mind of the small anxieties of the city. You forget the depths, the deadlines, the noise. There is only the horizon. There's only the steady footfall. There's only the need to rest. When the stars appear to sleep, the deep sleep of the desert traveler. When you lie down tonight, imagine the sand cold, now beneath your back. Air thin and sharp above you, silence so complete, it rings in your ears. Imagine the great wide blanket of the universe it pressed. Down upon the sleeping caravan, the gold sleeps beneath heavy leather, the salt sleep encased in reed mats. The drivers sleep curled close to their beasts, and the desert breathes around. Thema, slow deep breath. The oldest trade route in the world moving. moving at the speed of a dream, at the speed of Historith, slow, hypnotic speed of the deep desert sleep. Fire whispers now a soft, steady breath of juniper and acacia. The amber glow fails to push back the true nature of the night. Great cold. Of the Sahara is a cold that does not sting it simply claims a heavy blanket of bonadite. Frost that settles inside the marrow. You can huddle closer and closer, but the vastness knows your secret. The sun remembers the sunfire, but the air forgets. Everything we spoke of gold and salt riches that drew men across this screaming emptiness, but tonight we sit with the other Carensi. True cost of the caravan, the scent of it. The smell is not romanticist, is the hard truth, it is stale. Sweat pressed into damp, coarse wool days upon days of dried goat fatrincid butter, rubbed onto cracked skin. The metallic tang of too little water. The sweet, heavy exhaustion, a smell of human necessity. Smoke curls up, taking the smells with it. Only briefly, and then the cold wind pushes them back down, forcing their knowledge into your lungs. This is survival. This is the true archive of the rootless. And now, to the sound that is not silence, the great desert hums low-frequency note that vibrates. Through the sleeping forms, the camels groan deep rhythmic complaints, a sound of ancient burden. And they carry the weight. They carry the weight. We carry the weight to the weight of what we are trading: salt for survival, gold for status, but always the silent hidden cargo of moral gray that shadows the firelight. The things purchased that cannot be eaten or spent, the human cost, the lives borrowed for the crossing, the bodies that will not rise when the sun returns. They are wrapped tight against the cold, and the dust will claim them silently. The earth here welcomes its own. The caravan moves on. Price of trade is not simply paid at the market gates. Is paid in the long, slow grinding hours, ache in the joints, the blurring of memory. Dear that tastes like copper on the tongue eat is the calculation of who gets the last cup of water, cold, ruthless accounting that keeps the fragile balance of the group intact, hypnosis by fire. We stare into the orange light seeking, forgiveness seeking the dawn. We are all ghosts passing through a desert of ghosts. The fire crackles lower, the wood becomes ash, the amber fades to deep garnet, a slow fade. A slow fade, a slow fade. You feel the sand shift beneath your mata sound like dry. Whispering secrets, the wind picks up, carrying fine particles, dust that settles on the eyelids, dust that tastes of distance and drought. The journey is a constant of forgetting, a necessary amnesia against the suffering. But the body remembers the tired. Muscles remember the slope of the dune. The cracked lips remember the thirst. The memory is stored in the cold. The cold remembers everything. Let the whisper of the fire pull you down into the earth's slow turning down into the sleep that only exhaustion can bring. The desert watches over you now. The stars are in different high cold witness as though the grinding endurance, the moral grave survival, the slow march of history sleep through the cold. The fire is dying down. Sand settles, now night concludes, the final caravan moves slowly into the deepening violet twilight. The journey ends, but the mystery lingers. Silence now is not empty, is heavy with a million steps, a million breaths. The ghost of the path remains. Sought the gold, we followed the salt. We listened for the bells, but the deepest treasure of the caravan is the knowledge that was swallowed by the endless dust. Think of the scale of it. 50 generations passing these routes. The desert floor is a layered cemetery of ambition, of fear, of devotion. We look out across the shifting dunes. Where is the city that vanished without trace? Where is the library that turned holy to dust? Where are the kings whose names were whispered only to fade on the dry wind? Dry wind, the perpetual breath of the Sahara. It tells us nothing clearly. It only whispers promises of secrets, promises of history, secrets that belong to the sun-scorched earth itself. The heat of the day recedes, leaving behind an amber glowing ancient warmth that settles on the skin, a ghost warmth, a memory of 10,000 fires. The legacy is not just the empires that rose and fell. It is the enduring quiet of the human heart that survived the impossible distance, that negotiated the impossible. Hunger, the Tuareg, the guardians, the keepers of the compass. They still remember the names of the wells that dried out. They still know the sound of the wind that warns of a storm. They're living libraries of patience. Their eyes hold the maps. of ancestors' maps that the satellite cannot see. Gold changed hands. The slaves were marched. The cultures collided and merged. But what about the cargo that was truly priceless? The songs that were sung to the empty sky, the prayers offered in the deepest nights. These are the echoes that survive. They cling to the rocks, they settle in the valleys. We leave the caravan route now, we leave the deep silence of the sand. But we cannot leave the questions. The routes are closed, but the history is open. It remains open, waiting for the curious eye. The Trans-Saharan trade changed the world, connected the deep forest to the Mediterranean heart. It proved that human will is stronger than the distance, stronger than the endless terrible heat. It is hidden, it is waiting, is lost beneath the layers of time. The desert never gives up its secrets easily, but it always leaves a trail. A subtle rhythm, a repetitive truth. The fire dims now. The last embers turn to ash. We have followed the salt trails far enough, but if the great ocean of sand could be crossed for months, if life could flourish on the edge of extinction, then imagine the distances we have not yet explored. Imagine the journeys waiting in the great cold. Turn now from the burning amber light. We turn our gaze away from the deep south to a land of frozen mountains and endless sky. We leave the gold of the hot south, or the silks and spices of the cold east. A different kind of crossing a route of ice and jade and forgotten kingdoms, a trail that stretched not months but years. Next time we follow the greatest ribbon of human movement ever conceived, thread that wove the world together. We seek the hidden cities built on the back of camels and dreams. We travel the slow road of empire and peril. Next time, the Silk Road. The fire remembers me, the dry acacia crackled. Low a slow burn, an amber glow against the deepest black. We sat so close to the warmth, so close to the sound of the wood giving up its heat. The scent of burning resin, sweet and sharp. The cold desert tried to steal the heat. It tried and it tried and it tried. But for those hours, for those slow hours, the fire won. It showed us what was real, a temporary victory against the vast empty dark. But what did they trade for their gold? What did the desert masters truly buy with salt and spices and slaves? Was it the weight of the metal itself, or was it the memory of the fire, the 6 months of silence they sold there? Souls to carry. That is the secret of the desert trade, the history we forgot. This is 9, we are traversing the silence. Sahara is not merely sand, it is the greatest clock history ever built. Its mechanism is the pace of a single camel stride a mile. An hour, 6 months to cross. Imagine a journey measured in moons, not minutes, Journey where the destination becomes irrelevant, where the only truth is the movement itself. Slow. Movement relentless, slow. Movement, the Trans-Saharan Caravan was not eroded. Was a ritual resignation, a profound acceptance of slowness. The world told them, hurry, the desert said. Wait, the camel sighs, the leather creaks a gentle complaint. The bell beneath the lead beast offers the only song, a monotonous chime, a lullaby of endurance. Ting tong, ting tong, always ting tong. Feel the dust, the fine red silt that coats the tongue. The eyelash is the very marrow of the bone. It is inescapable, is the atmosphere of the trade. They breathed the cost of their profit. We are moving south now away from the Mediterranean, whispered deep into the heart of the great thirst into the Sudanic kingdoms where the gold waited, where the secrets were stored. The heat rises in waves. It warps the air. The horizon shimmers and lies, promising water, promising rest, promising a city that is not there. The illusion becomes of the navigation. You must trust what you know, not what you see. And the men walked beside their beasts. They did not ride always. They walked to preserve the camel's strength. They walked to pay their penance. They walked, and they thought, what does 6 months of continuous walking do to the human mind? It strips away the small anxieties, dissolves the noise of the marketplace. It leaves only the essential, the need for water, the need for shadow, the need for sleep. It creates a space, a void into which the soul finally speaks. The caravan was a moving monastery, a slow, profound purification. The stars became their map. The sky was not a ceiling, it was a blueprint of divine intention. Every night the map unfolded new and cold and vast. They knew the way by the position of the ancient lights, the lights that never rushed, the lights that always moved slow. The trade was not just gold and salt, it was knowledge of survival, the secret routes known only to the Tuareg masters, the location of the Geltes, the hidden pools, the names of the ancestors who died leading the way. They died steady. They died remembering the fire. Remember the camels pace 1 mile an hour, one breath at a time. The most successful. Empire was not built on speed or steel. It was built on patience. It was built on the hypnotic rhythm of the sand. Slow history is the true history. The deep history, we follow their tracks. The dust remembers every hoofprint, every footstep of the lost. Millions who traverse this silent ocean, we're moving slow. We must move slow. We are listening for the chime ting tong. Desert demands your patience. The desert demands your silence. The fire whispers now a low murmur off burning acacia root. Heat embraces the front of your fascia, deceptive promise. The vast cold of the tenor waits just behind your neck. It waits, it breathes it. Pulls the breath from the men around us. It steals the moisture from the air itself. The scent is thick to night smoke. And salt sweat dried to leather and fear, and underneath it, all the metallic tang of old copper. Heavy musk of ivory pulled from the forest minutes ago. This is the breath of the trade. The deep gray truth off, the Saharan slow sleep. We talk of gold. We talk of prestige. We talk of the knowledge brought across the Dunnasby scholars and scribes, but only the fire knows the cost. The cost is not paid in bangers. The payment is in the knees that will never straighten. The payment is in the lungs choked with fine. Red dust, the dust that coats the tongue, the dust that settles deep, deep in the soul. Closely at the faces by the firelight, they are masked in shadow. They are carved by exhaustion. The men who carry the burden, the caravan must move. The caravan must always move if a man stumbles, if a beast breaks a leg. The choice is made instantly. There's no ceremony there. Is no pity in the desert pity? Is a luxury that kills the rest of the line. The great choice, is it better for one man to perish here? For the entire line of 60 souls to die ladder fighting over the final water skin. Decision is instantaneously and utterly brutal. It must be brutal to survive it. Must be merciless to reach the salt. We do not speak of those who fall behind there. Names are erased by the wind immediately. Their absence is noted only by the lighter load. Silence is heavy. The silence is the real moral compass of the sand. It points only towards survival. It demands absolute obedience to the pathless and to the crackle. Listen to the deep sigh of the tethered camels. They too know this burden. Their humps are shrinking. Their knees are scarred by years of kneeling. They carry the precious cargo. They carry the cargo that defines empires, but they are themselves the fuel if the journey fails. Forgotten secret of the slow sleep. The camel is merely a vessel of Watera. Mobile bank of protein. We love them. We curse them. We know that one must be sacrificed if all else fails. That is the grey bargain. The trade is not just between Timbuktu and Tripoli. The trade is between the living and the possibility of death. Every single hour. The caravan master stands rigid. His eyes reflect the amber glow. He has seen too much. He has decided too much. He carries the weight of every soul. He Savadan every soul he left to the dunes. He must remain stone. He must be the absolute cold lodges in a world of absolute heat and madness. He watches the flames consume the wood slowly. He measures the night by the disappearance of the fuel sleep is. Dangerous sleep is a surrender to the cold. That weight sleep is a moment where the fear can creep back and the fear of the emptiness. The fear that they crossed the last great Dunyanli to find no oasis, nothing but endless dry, nothing but the fire, holds us. The fire is the ritual. The fire promises tomorrow. It is a hypnotic, pulsy, slow rhythm. It makes the air bearable. It lets us forget the names we must not speak until the sun returns. Until the desert demands another step and another choice. Watch the embers drop one by one deep silence. Wait. Turn now to the residue of time. The desert keeps its secrets well. 1,000 years of walking, 1,000 years of silence. Just the dry air remembers everything. The sun setting leaves long. Shadows stretching like ghosts. Ghost shadows of the camels and the burdens they carry gold. And salt and knowledge and the weight of nations. The sand beneath our fingertips is fine, so old. Every grain a story, every drift a silence. Here is not empty silence. It is packed full of voices never heard. The legacy is not in the palaces they built, but in the paths they wore into the rock, the indelible tracks of the Timbuktu trail. Road made of intention and endless thirst, but history always leaves gaps. Vast shimmering absences in the narrative. The great mystery of the vanished library of Djenne. Where did the scrolls go? Did The sand swallowed the history whole. They say some caravans simply disappeared, swallowed by the great dunes. Of the empty quarter, no bones found, no cargo identified, just gone, vanished into the heat, haze, a whispered curse. Deep desert mystery. The mystery of the secret cache's gold, hidden beneath rock cairns, waiting for a return that never came. Who? Buried the treasure we found, only fragments of the maps. The desert protects its mystery fiercely. It guards the memories of the forgotten kings, who traded slaves for silver kings who died alone. In the dark, this vast emptiness is a vault, cool. Dark vault of profound mystery, the mystery of the lost oasis, the water source that only appears when needed most and vanishes at dawn. We chase the echoes, we chase the mystery. The fire is low, now the wood is settled. A deep amber glow holds the air. Scent of cedar and dying embers lingers slow. We watch the smoke rise straight into the black sky. This journey, this slow, relentless history, to shape the world you inhabit now. The roots remain not paved, not marked by highway signs, but deep in the collective. Memory of the people, the salt still moves, the knowledge still flows, but faster now, too fast. We lost the slowness, we lost the silence. Replaced the rhythm of the camel step with the roar of the internal combustion engine, but the soul of the desert demands slowness, it demands respect for the immense distance. Immense distance, the immense distance. The lesson of the caravan is patience, endless, steady, waiting and walking. We walk, we walk. The fire whispers its final truths we have followed. The salt we have followed, the scrolls. We have followed the dust of 1,000 lifetimes, but there is one final destination we must trace. Place whispered only at the highest peaks of the dunes, a source of unimaginable wealth, the land of the hidden. Water and the secret forge, we have spoken of gold in transit. We have spoken of the golden thrones of Mansa. Musa, but where did all that gold truly come from? Who dug the earth? Who protected the secret next? Time we turn our attention completely inward to the deepest, darkest mines of the desert. The mystery of the source, the mystery of the wealth, the forgotten kingdom of Wondera. Enter the mountains where the very stone bleeds yellow. What sacrifice did the earth demand for its gold? And did the caravans carry more than wealth out of Africa? Did they carry a terrifying cursed sleep? Now, and prepare for the darkness. The darkness swallowed the fire, swallowed the amber glow. Crackling, wood-hissing pine resin spitting sparks into the absolute black. The scent of burning desert thorn was our only comfort. Our only shield against the cold that seeps not into the bones, but into the deep, deep memory we remember the fire. Remember the slow burn, but did the Sahara truly care about the salt or the gold? Did it care about the silks, the dates, the weapons, or did it only care about the secret of pure slowness, the slow pace of the Trans-Saharan Caravan, the months of crossing? The desert let us look closer at what the sand truly carried. It was not cargo. It was time itself. A crossing takes months, not days, not weeks, months. A concept foreign to the hurried world is a journey measured in the slow, deliberate pulse of the camel. The ship of the desert. The sound is simple, a rhythmic, soft thud, 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 padded footfall on ancient rock, a perpetual swaying. Side to side, gentle motion designed for endurance, designed to lull the traveler into a deep historical meditation we follow. The caravan, we follow the movement. 3,000 camels, sometimes 5,000, a river of slow patience stretching across the horizon. The sand is endless, it whispers its size, changes color from ochre to pale rose to deep iron red. And the sun is a heavy presence, pressing down, stealing the moisture, stealing the sound, leaving only the hypnotic sway. Listen to the sound of the saddle. Leather creaking softly, a whisper of friction, the constant low grunt of the burden beast. The dust rises and settles, sedimentation so slow it mimics stasis. You begin to forget where you started. You begin to forget the names of the cities you left behind. The journey is a lesson in temporal humility. Time slows down, it thickens. Like heavy honey, a single day can feel like a week can merge into a single shimmering heat haze. Trans-Saharan route demands this slowness, demands that you surrender your concept of speed, because speed is death. Here only slowness sustains. Life only the rhythmic thud, the pace of sleep walking through history. Imagine the stillness of the midnight halts when the fire is low and the sound of the crackling wood is gone and the silence returns. silence so profound it feels like the desert is breathing right next to you. Sky above is an absolute velvet bowl punctured by stars, too brilliant, too close to you. Look up and understand why the crossing takes months. You understand the vastness, the emptiness, the utter indifference of the earth to your human hurry. The traders, they were carrying much more than commodities. They carried exhaustion. They carried faith. They carried the immense burden of isolation. Every single step, every single sway was a negotiation with thirst, negotiation with patience, negotiation with the relentless sun month. After month, the caravan route was not just an economic highway, it was a psychological experiment. How long can the human mind endure absolute repetition, absolute heat, danger, the rhythmic sway, the endless sand, the slow crawl toward the horizon? The journey became the sleep itself, a waking dream of endless dust, the sway of the camel, the thud lulling us into the deepest of the desert history, a place where time stopped, where only endurance mattered, where only the memory of the fire brought comfort, the slow burn, the months of crossing, the infinite peace of the camel's steady breath. Sway. We are still swaying. The air bites clean and sharp. The air bites. Cold and deep it is the cold of the endless sand. The cold that steals the warmth you thought was yours, a cold that sinks into the bone and waits there, waiting even here by the heart fire, the crackle, the hiss, the sweet pitch. It rises slow and heavy. It bites the infinite darkness, a small, sweet island of light, a temporary truce with the vast, hungry night. Look closer now past the amber glow into the faces etched by sun and worry, the deep lines, the tired eyes, the geography of 5,000 miles written on a human map. This slow journey, this hypnotic shuffle of beasts and men, is not merely adventure, is a calculation, a ruthless equation of human endurance, a measure of profit bought by a measure of pain, a measure of walking bought by a measure of thirst. The caravan sleeps, but the contract does not. The cargo is gold, shining heavy. The cargo is salt white as bone. And the cargo sometimes is breathing. Sometimes the cargo answers when spoken to. Look at the gray spaces of the journey, the parts we do not speak of in the marketplace. The debt owed to the sand. The desert takes years from the body. It takes hope from the soul. It demands everything for the promise of something more. Listen now to the sounds of rest, the slow, deep breathing of 100. Beast, the soft groan of leather settling, heavy scent of old dried dung and stale sweat, and the metallic smell of stale blood on old bandages. These are the perfumes of trade, the true incense of the desert exchange. The fire whispers secrets to the wind, secrets of the lost ones. Those simply sat down in the yellow emptiness and decided the cost was too high. They did not turn back. They simply stopped moving forward. The desert absorbed their story, sand shifting, sand covering, sand hiding. Sit, and we watched the wood turn to ash. We watched the light retreat from the edges of the camp. The shadows breathe in and out like a great sleeping animal waiting for the dawn. The cold seeps into the soles of the feet. The cold presses down from the billion. Distant stars, we rely on the fire. We rely on the rhythm of the breathing beside us, repetition. It is comfort, repetition. It is survival, one foot in front of the other, one slow month after the next one. Cup of bittersweet T1 shared story that keeps the madness. Just beyond the light we trade, we survive. We carry the wealth of kingdoms on our backs, but the real weight is the moral weight. The knowing that everything has a price, and the price is rarely paid in silver, is paid in labor, paid in fear, paid in broken. Trust the desert forces this terrible honesty. You cannot hide your weakness here. You cannot hide the hunger in your eyes. You cannot hide the burden in your heart. The fire flickers lower now. Thin red warning against the overwhelming dark of our minds. He uses dude, we are small. We are fragile. We are just vessels carrying dreams and desperate hope across the largest, slowest emptiness on earth, and the emptiness watches. Emptiness waits it, whispers names. It whispers the cost, the cost, the cost, the cold, deep cost. The desert night deepens, now the final timbers sigh. Slow warm air rises. Journey ends not with a shout, but with a deep inward settling. We look back across the months. The endless crossing of the slow historical trade route. The fire is no longer crackling it. It is a deep red heart beating softly for the vanished caravan, beating Softly for the enduring legacy, what is left when the footprint vanishes, when the wind wipes clean the map. Gold is dispersed, the salt is consumed, the spices are. Distant scent on the memory wind, but the legacy remains weaving of worlds, a slow, deep connection between the north and the south, between the silence and the story, between the history we know, the mystery that sleeps in the sand, the mystery that sleeps. We sought the root of the merchants. We found the root of history itself, a root that travels deep, deep into the silent earth deep. Beneath the shifting dunes, the libraries of the desert, they were not just buildings of mud brick, they were the minds of the scholars, the hands of the copyists, the steady, slow transmission of knowledge, transmitted slowly, hand to hand across the terrible heat, across the killing cold, across the vastness of the Saharan shield. And what did we lose? What precious text turned to dust? What perfect design was forgotten? What wise man spoke his final word to the wind alone? This is the great haunting of the caravan, the silence where the answer should be, space between the stars above and the unread map below. Great caravan has stopped, and now it has stopped its months-long journey. Camels kneel in the quiet dark, but the history does not stop it, merely sleeps it. Sleeps waiting for the sound of hooves, the rhythm of the slow pace, the rhythm we learn to trust, the rhythm of the breathing desert. The desert grants us peace. Now it grants us true rest from the speed of the outside world, rest from the noise of the rushing modern day. We become slow. We become deep. We become the slow, deep memory of the past. We must hold on to the slowness, hold on to the depth, hold on to the quiet patience of the journey. The embers are fading to gray. The deep red glow is retreating inward. It is time to let the fire rest. It is time to let the long story rest. But remember the weight you carried. Remember the wisdom you found. Remember the long shadow of the caravan. The final glow vanishes now. The scent of burning pine is almost gone. Desert is dark, only the magnificent cold stars remain watching over the history we shared, watching over the memory we carry now. We have traveled far together, deep into the past, deep into the desert night sleep. We'll now sleep. Deep sleep, the long, slow sleep of the history makers. We remember the fire, always the fire, the low light, the amber glow is sweet. Scent of burning pine or scrub acacia pulls the desert darkness back just a little. The sand breathes silence beyond that small light. The air is velvet thick. The heat has gone, but the memory of the sun remains a scar on the western horizon. You hear the heavy breath of the camels, the soft chime of their bells ringing, softly, softly. The fire warms the calloused hands. It stains the weary faces. It promises tomorrow. A tiny moving star against an ocean of waiting sand. And here is the forgotten secret of the salt roads. Was the journey really about the tonnage of gold, the weight of the ivory, the promise of the silks, or was it about the stories traded at the very edge of the flame, the stories that kept the ghosts away, the stories that kept men alive, the stories that stitched the known world to the unknown one across the months, across the measureless time? We talked tonight of the crossing, the true, slow crossing, not the maps we draw now, but the slow, deep ache of time measured not in days or weeks, but in moons, in the depletion of water skins. This was not a route, it was a transformation, a quiet emptying of all that you once were. The Sahara demands a soul for every mile, and the caravan pays the price, slowly, hypnotically moving. Think of the pace now, the slow historical crawl, the heavy tread of 1,000 animals day after day. The sun, a blinding weapon. The world becomes simple. There is the gait of the camel, rhythm of the steps, the low moan of the wind, the slow march. The slow, slow march is the tempo of survival. The sand stretches. Infinity of grit red and ochre and pale gold shifting beneath the hooves. Living thing, a restless sleeper, they traveled. For months, not weeks, not quick dashes, but 360 revolutions of the sun, until the face was cracked leather, until the memory of water tasted like paradise itself. We traced the path of the mullahs and the merchants, the slaves and the seekers who traded salt, white, brittle, precious salt for gold, heavy, dense. African gold, the commodity, was one thing. The commitment was another, to sleep under the desert blanket of stars, a cold, fierce, blue-black canopy every night, every single night. Imagine the silence, eh? Sound so huge, so pure, it hums a silence that swallows every fear you hold. A silence that forces conversation with yourself. Conversation With the dust conversation with God, the trade was profound, but the stillness was more so. The stillness, the vastness, the sheer emptiness that stretched out until the very edge of comprehension. The quiet tyranny of waiting for the dawn, waiting for the oasis, waiting for the end of the journey that may never come. The caravan moves a serpent of commerce worn down. By the wind worn down by the grit, they speak of the lost wells, the wells that vanished beneath the creeping dunes, the places where men laid down their heavy burdens and never rose. The desert remembers. The desert keeps the secrets, it holds the bones. Out of the careless, it sings the slow lullaby of endurance tonight. We travel with them, we feel the grit on our tongue, we smell the fear mixed with the dried dates, we hear the hypnotic creak of the leather saddles. The slow historical march begins into the deep hypnotic night across the months, across the sand, slowly. The fire breathes low, now a heavy, deep breath of amber and ash. We are still here watching the shadows stretch. The desert night is not silent, but cold, a vast, relentless cold that crushes. Sound it seeps into the heavy wool cloaks, into the warm leather bindings. It finds the gaps, the places where the skin is thin. The chill of the Sahara is unforgiving. It reminds every traveler, every night hat, life is temporary here, yeah, fragile temporary. Spark in the fire is the memory of this inner fragile memory. We stay by the warmth, by the low hiss of wood. We stay and we listen to the slow breathing of men who have traveled 60 dawns and 60 nights of grinding sand. Their sleep is not rest, it is exhaustion, a desperate temporary escape from the knowledge of what waits at sunrise. Knowledge of the miles remaining. The smell here is thick and complex. It is not just smoke, it is the stale odor off bodies pressed too close too long. The sweet metallic tang of old dried sweating are woven with the musk of 30 camels. The dust never truly leaves them, never leaves their throats, never leaves the heavy folds of their turbans. The air itself tastes like fine grit, a constant reminder, a constant grit. The moral ledger of the caravan is written in gold and salt, but in water is the currency of sin, and salvation water is the true master of this path. You watch the master merchant, the one who holds the keys, one who counts the leather skins. He sleeps with the water close. The decision is his and his alone. Who gets the extra mouthful when the sickness comes? Who is deemed worthy of the final drops? This is the gray space of the desert road. The trade is glittering gold in rich fabrics, but the engine that drives it is brutal calculus. How much is one man's life worth when that life requires a day's ration for 7 others? How much does kindness weigh when pitted against the weight of the market profit? The fire crackles a low judgmenta. Quiet, steady, relentless judgment. We hear the soft moan from the edge of the circle. A man is coughing deep and dry, a cough that tears at the chest, a sound of dust settling in the lungs. The others shift slightly. They pull their cloaks tighter. They pretend. They do not hear, they cannot afford to hear, because to hear is to acknowledge the burden. To acknowledge the burden is to invite the choice, and the choice is always terrible. The caravan cannot afford the weak. The weak slow the progress, the weak consume. The precious water, the weak steal the hope of the strong. So they are often left, they are often forgotten, a small pile of belongings beside a dune. Prayer whispered into the endless winded life, traded for a slightly faster pasia. Slightly better chance. For the rest, this is the hidden price of the gold trade. The secret tax paid in human suffering. It is not recorded in any official scroll. It is known only to the vultures and the sand. The sand remembers. The sand always remembers. The shifting dunes swallow the evidence quickly. The wind wipes the footprints clean, but the cold still carries the ghost of that decision. Echo of the final thirst. The master merchant turns in his sleep. His face is hard. Even in repose, he carries the weight of those choices. The gold will feel heavier when he touches it. It will be cold with the knowledge of what was lost. The fire sinks further now. Wood turns into soft white ash. The silence grows louder, heavier. We wait for the dawn. We wait for the slow, inevitable burning. Light out reveal the path ahead and the choices that must be made, and the sand settles now. Weight of the centuries lifts slowly from our shoulders. So burden of gold and salt and vanished kings. It was never just trade, it was the migration of the soul, deep exchange of wisdom, a library carried on the back of a tired camel, 1,000 stories packed into a single scroll. Look at the maps. Now we draw straight lines, clean borders. They forget the slow curve of the endless path, turf-beaten. By millions of feet, generations walking, generations waiting. The echoes remain ghosts of Gao, and Timbuktu still whisper of abundance they. Whisper of scholars who loved the night, sought knowledge under the hard light of the desert stars. They whisper of Mansa Musa and his magnificent journey, a journey of such splendor. It warped the price of gold, forever a shockwave felt across 3 continents. The desert holds that memory. It holds the memory and the misderive great unspoken cost. How many merchants fell to the heat? How many bodies were swallowed whole by the dunes? How many secrets died between the oasis whispered to the wide and different skyscrapers only the jackals heard. Sen remembers the footprints, but never the names. Desert waits for us, still patient and eternal waiting for the return of the rhythm, hypnotic sway of the loaded beast. Ancient call of the driver guiding his line. Hush, they called. Hush. Now, the journey is long, and silence is a virtue. The journey is long, and patience is all we possess. We spoke of the desert, felt its heat, we breathed its dry air. We imagined the slow passage of months, unbearable weight of the sun, but the desert keeps its own counsel. Its greatest treasures are not the gold bars, but the untold stories, the lost letters, the roots that vanished beneath shifting mountains of sand. The silence holds more truth than any history book. The flame before us dips low now. Wood is nearly exhausted, the vibrant orange fades to bruised purple glow, a final amber heartbeat. The scent of burning pine oil thins replaced by the cool, sharp air, the settling night. The shadows grow long and density stretch out to hide all the corners of the world. The fire breathes out now a slow, deep sigh of gray smoke. The crackling stops here is only the faint hiss of cooling asha. Brittle shell of memory remains it. It's time to let the night take hold. Distillery Luba finds its rest. Here in the silence after the journey, we have walked the caravan. Wrote in our minds, we have seen the kings and felt the dust now. We must wait for the sun to return, wait for the next to unfold its slow scroll, wait for the fire to be rekindled until. Then let the desert lull you lit. The great emptiness soothe you lit. The silence settle like the sand. The journey is done, sleep. Now sleep. The heat was always there, but the fire was different, eh? Necessary heat, eh? Controlled warmth against the vast, empty, cold, crackling wood-dry acacia. It painted the tent. Walls in a flickering amber glow, I can still taste that smoke. The scent of burning pine mixed with ancient desert salts. Fire was our clock, our only friend in the infinite darkness. We sought speed, always speed. The merchants demanded quick returns. Kings wanted their gold now, but the desert demanded reverence. The Sahara held a slow secret, a profound truth forgotten by the fast, modern world. The crossing was not measured in miles. It was measured in months of dust, months of silence, where the only sound was the wind sighing and the endless rhythmic crunch of hooves on sand. History calls it a trade route. Path for salt and gold, but it was a process of transformation, eh? Historical sleep, walk, imagine the dedication, imagine the patience too. Move civilization not in days but in seasons, and swallowed all sound dunes that stretched like sleeping giants. The Trans-Saharan Caravan was not fast, it was the antithesis of speed. It was the greatest deliberate slowness known to Mena. Meditation in motion, they did not rush the desert. You cannot rush the deep ocean, you cannot rush the stars. They surrendered to the pace of the dromedary. The ship of the sands listened to the rhythm. The slow, heavy breath of the camel, 1, 2, 3, 4, a slow, hypnotic cadence. Day after day after day, the caravan moved perhaps 3 miles an hour. 3 miles an hour for months. 3 miles an hour for the memory of an empire. Was this slowness so vital? Why did the trade that built empires rely on this painful patience? Because the desert is truth. It strips away the frantic noise of the city. It reveals what is necessary, and what is necessary is water, and what is necessary is sleep under the bowl of the sky, where every star is visible, where the slow turning of the cosmos dictates your pace. The sand becomes a cradle. The vastness becomes a blanket. The traders carried more than trade goods. They carried the deepest form of trust in the guide who knew the well that dried up 50 years ago. Rust in the rhythm that kept the beast alive, just that their children would see the gold of it if they did not salt. From the north moving south, a heavy white currency, salt. Heavy, precious, essential gold from the south, moving north light. Luminous, deadly two elements crossing paths in the longest sleepwalk on earth. And what did this slowness breed? It bred knowledge, it bred deep conversation and the quiet firelight. It bred the time to remember the stories of the wells, the stories of the ancestors, the stories of the terrible sandstorms that demanded an absolute halt. The caravan was an enforced silence, a quiet journey of the soul where every day was identical. To the last sun-sand camel shadow, an infinite loop of heavy movement do. You know, the depth of the commitment to put your life on hold for months, to disappear into the heat haze, knowing only the promise of the rhythm, the slow. Rhythm, we forget the power of slowness. We forget that the greatest wealth was moved not by frantic speed, but by absolute measured patience. The patience of the sand itself. They walked for months, they slept for months, they traded in gold in time. Longest, slowest, highest stakes transaction in all of history. The caravan moves still in our minds slowly, so. Slowly, the fire breathes low. Now a slow ember heartbeat against the bone deep cold. The deep cold of the Sahara night, the cold that reaches up. From the sand, the cold that knows no mercy, it finds the gaps in the wool and wraps it. Chills the thick hides of the camels, it settles heavy on the sleeping men. Sit by the glowing coals, by the amber whisper. Remember the sun that left us so fast. The sun that scorches by day, the sun that vanishes, leaving only the biting wind, the crackling wood, the hiss and pop. This is the only warmth. This is the only shield. The smell of the desert night is complex, it is not clean. It is thick and heavy. It is the metallic scent of old fear. Is the bitter musk of the camel herd. Pressed close, it is the rancid sweet smell of dried dates and stale water skin. It is the scent of sweat that never truly dries, sweat that carries the weight of the journey. The weight of the salt they carry, the weight of the gold they seek. Look into the heart of the ember. It holds the moral gray, the unspoken bargain. Every grain of salt mined from the north, every piece of intricate cloth carried south, every luxury, every rare spice was paid for not just in gold, it was paid for in silence, it was paid for in months of hunger, it was paid for in the small death of hope. The desert takes the weak ones first, it takes their breath, their spirit, their memory. The living ones keep moving forward. They walk past the markers, the small stones, the shallow graves. They walk because the duty demands it. They walk because the gold waits. They walk because there's no path back. The sound here is deceptive. It seems like silence, but listen closer, listen deeper. Hear the wind rasping across the dunes. It is the sound of time erasing itself. Is the sound of the world breathing slowly. Low moan of a camel shifting under its heavy burden. A quiet cough from the man beside. You a sound that reminds you that breath is precious here. Breath is earned with every step. The cold settles deeper. The cold insists they trade in salt. They trade in gold. And sometimes they trade in human beings. The greatest moral gray of the wide hot. Roots, the price of survival for some became the property of others. The men who sit here now by the fire, they carry that burden too. They carry the secrets in their chests. The knowledge of what was left behind, the knowledge of what was bought and sold. Under the wide empty sky, the fire hides nothing. The fire shows everything. The red reflection on their weary faces, we see the exhaustion, the endless slow pull. Yearning for a river, for green, for home, the amber glow fades down, the warmth pulls. Back closer to the burning heart of the wood, we wait in the vast cold quiet. Wait for the promise of the dawn. We wait for the slow history to continue. We wait by the fire, we wait and we listen. The desert holds, the desert holds. The final flicker dances a small amber island against the ocean of the night. We have traveled 10,000 miles, 10 episodes, 10,000 slow breath. Sleep months crossing the desert. The desert does not forget, it simply absorbs. The desert simply absorbs. We speak now of legacy. Speak now of the ghosts of the great exchange, the heavy footfalls of the dromedaries they stopped long ago. The silence they left behind is a silence built of gold and salta. Massive, haunting echo upon the ancient cities carved from the mud. Of the Sahel, Timbuktu, Djenne, they were not born of conquest. They were born of negotiation, born of the camel. Born of the Covenante handshake sealed by the sun and the silent. Promise of safe passage. This is the great secret of the sleeping route. Was not the destination that mattered, but the commitment to the journey itself. The slow pace, the profound commitment, the maps we hold today. They are too sharp, too fast, too defined. Show roads paved with asphalt and air flight paths. That skipped the weight of distance, but the old maps, the true maps, they were written in the sand. They were written in the movement of the stars, the deep movement. They were written in the lineage of the Tuareg guides whose eyes held the wisdom of 10 generations. Those maps are gone now, or perhaps they simply sleep. They sleep beneath the shifting dunes, and this leads us to the mystery. Final enduring mystery of the Trans-Saharan sleep is not where the gold went, for the gold remains in the vaults of the modern world. The true mystery is what was lost. What priceless cargo did the endless sands finally claim? Know of the salt, we know of the slaves, we know of the gold, but what of the knowledge, what are the millions of manuscripts, the books? That spoke not just of mathematics and faith, but of philosophy, forgotten medicine that healed by the moon's rhythm. Histories written by voices long silenced by the sheer weight of time. Think of the libraries of Timbuktu, dust and fire claimed. So much a civilization's slow burning memory, 1,000 years of thought reduced to ash and wind sleep. Months crossing the desert means carrying the weight of the past. We have carried it together here in this firelight. We have listened for the distant ringing of the caravans, a hypnotic rhythm, a slow, insistent truth. The slow truth, the fire now begins its final bow. Pine scent fades to a thinner smoke, a memory of heat. The crackling sound softens, becomes a whisper, then nothing. The amber glow shrinks. Away from the edges of the darkness that has waited patiently all this time. It rushes in, now cool and absolute. The last ember winks out. The smell of ash is clean and sharp. The desert night surrounds us. Nasrullah is silent now. The stories are told, but the questions remain. What is your salt? What is your gold? What is the forgotten journey? You must now take cactus. It's now, but the desert waits for the dawn. We wait for your return.